From Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Liz Truss accuses Rishi Sunak of peddling Project Fear as they clash during last night's TV debate.
A very good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 26th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Rosie Wright.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss went head-to-head last night in a televised leadership debate that saw the candidates trade blows over tax cuts, inflation and defence.
The two Conservative rivals also promised to curb the power of the unions ahead of another walkout by rail workers scheduled for tomorrow.
Negligence from the energy regulator Ofgem has left consumers picking up the tab for failed companies. According to a new report from MPs, millions of people will be pushed into unmanageable debt without government support on energy bills.
And the former First Minister of Northern Ireland, David Trimble, has died at the age of 77. He played a key role in the Good Friday Agreement, earning him the Nobel Peace Prize.
Hello, good morning. Nice to have you on board, whether you're listening, whether you're watching, maybe you're doing a bit of both. Take part, and as you know, throughout the programme we will get viewers and listeners involved. You can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet at GB News as well. It'd be nice to hear from you. So the debate last night, it was at a very unsociable time for us, wasn't it?
It was, yes, and probably for you as well if you're watching at home.
Yeah, well, no, most normal people don't have to be like us and be at bed at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
2 minutes past 6.
So I lasted the course with it. I thought Rishi Sunak was a bit fired up, a bit pumped up. Don't know what he was on. And
it was almost like he came in with this real agenda to sort of push off the slick and was a little bit mean and interrupting.
I think it definitely looked that way. I definitely thought it came across that way. However, he didn't seem to do too bad overall. He did calm down after half an hour or so, and I thought he came across much better.
They had an opportunity to be quite civil, and I don't think either of them took it.
But you were in bed by that stage.
Well, I'd watched a little bit, yeah, that's true.
Yes.
Half an hour through.
We see after half an hour, my opinion is they did become more civil to each other.
So why did it take half an hour?
But she was nice about his shoes and he was nice about her earrings, and it was
That's true.
It all sort of calmed down.
How has wardrobe come into this conversation? But Nadine Dorris was responsible for that, definitely, yesterday.
Well, the two of them, they clashed on tax cuts, they clashed on the cost of living crisis, they clashed on defence, climate. It has to be said, certainly for the first half hour, quite fiery. Let's take a look.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. So I'm not putting it on the never, never. I would start paying it down in 3 years.
Liz, that's simply not right. You promised almost £40 billion of unfunded tax cuts, £40 billion more borrowing. That is the country's credit card. It's our children and grandchildren, everyone here's kids, who are going to have to pick up the tab for that.
Rishi, that is not true.
There's nothing conservative about doing that.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. I don't believe this negative, declinist language.
It's your own
that we're
economic
hearing.
advisor, Liz. It's not mine. It's your own advisor.
I have lots of economists that are backing my plans. Everybody thinks that putting up taxes at this moment is going to hurt the economy.
Do you know what mortgage rates are in the US at the moment? Do you want to use them as an example? Their mortgage rates are almost 50% higher than mortgage rates in this country because they're borrowing so much.
I'm sorry, this
Canada.
is scaremongering.
Canada actually
has Project Fear.
Liz, I remember the referendum campaign. I remember the referendum campaign, and there were only one of us who was on the side of Remain and Project Fear, and it was you, not me.
Okay.
And you talk
maybe
about
I've
this.
learnt from that.
What we do need to do is acknowledge that China is a threat to our national security. It's a threat to our economic security. And that's why, as Chancellor, I was pleased that we could put forward something called the National Security and Investment Bill. We also need to stand up for our values. And for example, when it came to Hong Kong, I was pleased to ensure that we put the funding in place to welcome to this country thousands of fleeing who wanted to leave Hong Kong.
Rishi, I challenged you on this in the debate last week. As recently as a month ago, you were pushing for closer trade relationships with China. This is not something you've advocated in government. I'm delighted that you've come round to my way of thinking.
So, after the debate, there was a poll by opinion, and it found that Rishi Sunak was he was found to have won. He was found to have won, Victorian language, amongst viewers in general, but Liz Truss stayed well ahead amongst Conservative voters. So if you're a general voter, and actually you don't count, not at the moment, you will count when it comes to general election, you like Rishi Sunak, but if you are a Conservative voter, Conservative member, you do count, you quite liked Liz Truss.
Let's find out more. Political correspondent at the Daily Express, Dan Pavley, joins us in the studio. Dan, Rishi Sunak had quite a mountain to climb when we looked at the polling amongst, and Eamonn's just talked about some fresh polling this morning, Conservative Party members. He didn't quite do enough.
Rishi Sunak, when they were in the first stage of this campaign, was very much the top dog. He had the support of all the MPs. And going into last night, what he knew was in this stage, as you said, amongst Tory members, he's not as popular. And I think what we saw last night was he came out fighting. He was talking over Liz Truss a lot. He was trying to get his point across. He was trying to say, look, I'm willing to put the fight in. I'm going to do what's needed to win you over. Unfortunately, though, while he does appear to have been more popular overall, that's largely helped by the support of Labour voters who backed up his support amongst who thought people won last night's debate. When you look at Tory members, it did tend to be Liz Truss who they preferred.
There's not a lot in it, though. There's not a lot between them. I mean, it's doable for him to claw this back.
There isn't a lot in it, and it has to be said that this campaign doesn't end until September the 5th. That's a long time to go, and who knows what can happen. There's plenty of opportunities for slip-ups, for the odd policy announcement that wins over voters, for more clashes and more fiery exchanges like we saw last night. Who knows what could happen between now and then?
But there aren't as many opportunities for Rishi Sunak to have so much of the spotlight to try and persuade over that membership.
I think what we're going to see in the coming weeks is that he will be taking every opportunity he can to get his point across. So what we've seen is he's announced that he's going to be doing more media interviews. He said he's going to do an interview with Andrew Neil on Friday night. What we've seen is Liz Truss is taking far more of a protect the lead approach. She's doing less media appearances. She's hoping that I've got the lead. Let's not try to mess it up by putting myself in the spotlight too much. He's going to take every opportunity he can to try to put that point across.
But she's already done the big interview. She came on this show. She did us. So she did 82% people watching loved her as a result. So she's preaching to the converted on a channel like this. They are her fans. What did you think overall? What did you think? What did you come away with your overall view of the pair of them?
My overview opinion of the pair of them was I think Tory MPs are putting their hands over their eyes and thinking, we can't do this for another 6 weeks. It became very nasty and very personal very quickly last night. At the end of this, they do need to come together. But
they said that. They said they would work together.
And so they did say that, but it's very easy to say the words. It's much harder to do. Last night, I thought, was more toxic in some of the exchanges than what we saw during some of the leaders' debates before a general election. And as much as they can say they want to be one party, the danger is you're going to have two factions fighting against each other in the months ahead, even when this is all over.
Well, it's basically on economic policy, isn't it?
Well, that was a very interesting thing. When they stopped talking about economics and they started talking about issues such as China or on strikes, actually, despite their different language, they were more or less on the same page. They both agreed they need to stand up more to China. They both agreed that they needed to do something about climate change. They both agreed that train strikes were wrong. It was just the economy, really, that was the main differentiating factor between them.
OK, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do now, Dan. We're going to go to Wilton in Wiltshire. So let's say good morning to Francis Moore, who's a GB News viewer and listener. And up late last night, Francis, watching all that went on. What did you think?
Good morning, Eamonn. Good morning, Rosie. Yes, I did stay up to watch last night. And it was a bit of a fiery 35 minutes on the economy. And there is blue water between the two candidates. I like both candidates, so let's be fair. Either would be a good representative to lead the Conservatives into the next election. For me, I found, and I think the actual studio audience found that Rishi was perhaps a little bit more progressive. Liz was still leaning on her past, which is a shame because I think she has a lot to offer, but she needs to shake that off and demonstrate how she's going to lead this country into, a successful fifth term for the Conservatives. I was shocked.
Francis, let's tell everybody about you. You're a very interesting man. Francis is 65 years of age. He's retired. He's on universal credit at the moment. He worked in the financial services industry for over 40 years. You are, Francis, a member of the Conservative Party, and illness has affected your career. You've been homeless in your time, my friend. He has used sheltered accommodation. I hear you were tempted to cancel your Conservative Party membership. Why did you decide to keep it?
Well, essentially, when I thought about it, I would be just wasting my vote for the future. And I wasn't prepared to do that. However much I've been disappointed in Boris, he was immensely successful, let's give him credit, for getting most of Brexit done. But he was a hopeless planner. He was a hopeless executor. I came from business, which is about long-term planning, which is why possibly I align a little bit more to Rishi, because, my business, pensions business, was about long-term planning. And I think that keeping my membership was a strategic move, and I'm pleased that I did, because I'm keeping my mind open, but I am pleased to see that the Conservative headquarters have confirmed that duplicate votes can be made. So the early lead that Liz Truss has garnered through her association as a successor of Boris, and the anger of some of my fellow members as to the defenestration of Boris, which I do feel is being unfairly laid at the door of Rishi. He wasn't the first to resign, and 50 other ministers followed him pretty damn quickly down the road. So I think that's unfair. But people are entitled to their opinions. But there is a great strength of opinion, particularly on GB News. I can see that as a regular viewer, that there is a great strength of feeling about the loss of Boris. And in many ways, he is a loss. But my view is perhaps slightly old-fashioned, conservative, which is that honesty, integrity, etc., truthfulness, is actually very much part of what we're about. If you can't trust what someone's saying, then I think we're into difficulties. And we were in difficulties. There's no doubt about that.
In the studio with us, Francis, the words that have just come out there, truth, integrity, do you think that this level of infighting in the party is going to leave, come September, a party that can claim any of those things?
I think it's certainly going to be harder. And I think what's interesting from what Francis was just saying there is that he said he'd be, both were good candidates. Party members want this to be one party that comes together. And the danger is it's the candidates that are making it harder for that to happen. What the members want is a happy family at the end of the day that can go and win the next election. They don't want to see this level of infighting.
Which camp do you think is playing fairest?
Oh, I think it's always hard to say because the different levels to this. You've got the candidates themselves, who both appear to be playing very fair and saying, I would never get involved. You've then got what do their supporters get on with, and what we've seen with that is people such as Nadine Dorries, who is supporting Liz Truss, was very vocal on social media yesterday in attacking Rishi Sunak for his wealth. Rishi Sunak's trying to keep his supporters more in line than that. But then you've also got the briefings to the media, and that can be done on a completely different level. So I think there are different levels to this, and I think for either of them to claim that they're being completely clean in this campaign would be wrong for them to say.
Dan, thank you very much indeed. Dan is the Deputy Digital Political Editor at the Daily Express. Francis, just finally, you were saying you're keeping an open mind. You haven't decided yet. How long do you think it will take you to decide?
I hope most of the remaining weeks, up until the 5th of September. My leaning currently is towards Rishi, but he needs to demonstrate a great deal. I would like to see Liz become a little more open. I still feel she's very defensive about her record, her past record, some of which is, frankly, to me, not memorable. I've been there. I think she still has a weakness around inflation, which obviously is a point that Rishi was trying to make very vehemently yesterday evening in the head-to-head debate. So there's still all to play for. And I think the important thing is that I would encourage my fellow Conservative members, take a deep breath at the moment. Don't just receive your ballots or go online and vote straight away. Just hold back. I think this debate is positive for the party. I know we've had blue on blue, and I don't want to see that. But on the other hand, I would rather see two very committed potential leaders really going for it. And I think that's positive. So I think there are positives to take out. I know the media wants to skew the debates, but let's give it a bit more time. Let's see how it goes down across the country in terms of the various hustings.
Well, Francis, unfortunately, we have no more time to give you. So, but you've been very measured, very, very considered, and I'm sure people will really have taken on board what you've had to say. But thank you very much indeed. From Wilton and Wiltshire, that's GB News viewer and listener Francis Moore. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, you're with breakfast.
A pleasure.
Great to have you. It's 17 minutes past 6. We want to have your say on the programme as well as Francis. Who's your winner? Is it Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss? Now, you can head over to our Twitter page at GB News. We've got a poll there and we'll reveal the results a little later in the programme.
Yeah, so get voting. Vote early, vote often. The time, 17 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise. And MPs are criticising the government over its handling of the coronavirus traffic light system, which set the rules for those arriving in the UK. The Public Accounts Committee says nearly £500 million was spent on the scheme, but only 2% of those required to quarantine in hotels tested positive.
England faces drought in August if the hot and dry weather continues. DEFRA and Environment Agency officials are meeting with water companies today to discuss how to protect water supplies.
The Centre for Mental Health warns economic equality is causing a public health emergency. It says poverty is toxic to people's mental and physical health. It says there's a link between poverty and a higher risk of illness, while a dip in income is linked to declining mental health.
Now, MPs have accused the energy regulator Ofgem of being negligent, leaving consumers picking up the tab for failed energy companies.
OK, this report is from MPs, and it also warns that millions of you will be pushed into unmanageable debt unless you get government support on your energy bills.
So what support is out there? Well, Will Hudson, energy expert and founder of thebigdeal.com, a consumer protection group, joins us in the studio. Thank you very much for speaking to us. What are we expecting from this report? It was over sort of 6 months ago now where lots of energy companies were going down, and there's a cost to that.
That's right. The report's pretty explosive, and it's stacked up the cost of having nearly 30 suppliers go bust in the last year alone. Now, what happens when they go bust is we, the taxpayer, have to pick up the bill, and that bill's amounted to £3 billion. That's nearly £100 per household in the UK.
Well, we heard this all the time. Month after month, somebody else was going bust. Why were they going bust? And a lot of these companies were green energy companies. I mean, were we sold a lie? Was the business model just unworkable?
It wasn't particularly green energy companies, Eamonn. It was all energy companies. So from Avro to Zebra, every kind of company you can imagine. And there are two things to look at. So first of all, it's just what happened in the energy market. We all know gas prices have soared. They've nearly tripled since the beginning of 2021. Now, a lot of those energy companies couldn't deal with that increase in price. They had promised to give their customers one price, but they hadn't bought the gas to do it for a year. So when the gas prices went up, they couldn't afford to honour their promises. But the second thing, and this comes out in today's report, is that a lot of these companies were not necessarily well run at all. The order of the day from Ofgem was, let's get competition, let's get lots of energy companies, and it doesn't matter if some of them are being run by cowboys.
I mean, do you have faith in Ofgem right now as an energy regulator?
Well, you've got a different regime in Ofgem now. I don't think there's any doubt at all that they let too many energy companies in and their licence conditions weren't strict enough. So you have to have faith, but I'd expect them to make some big differences in how they regulate the market.
Well, when an energy company says it is green, and how can they promise you green energy? Can they simply turn on the taps and say, this electricity that you're receiving is from a wind farm? Do they actually know that? Can they control it like that? I don't really understand the concept.
Sure, it's a tricky one. So you're absolutely right that when I fire up my kettle, in South London, you're firing up your kettle in Mayfair, probably, Eamonn, wherever you do it. It's the same electricity that's being used.
Yes.
But the grid, where it all comes from, gets its energy from different suppliers' contributions. So if you're with a green company, they might have said, right, we're getting it from offshore wind. Whereas if you're getting your energy from a British gas, they might have got it from nuclear, let's say. The point is, different energy companies contribute to the grid, then it all gets mixed together like an energy punch and ladled out to us in the same format.
Right. What is workable? What is sustainable now within these companies? Are we going to have the diversity that we had got 2 years or so ago, or is that now gone forever?
It's a very different market now, Eamonn. The truth is, a few years ago, the hope of getting the best prices we could relied apparently on lots of competition. You don't have that competition now because you don't have the energy companies. The way we get the best prices for people is through protection on bills and then also through energy efficiency measures by reducing energy usage.
But we all know the price cap is looming again in October, and right now in the midst of a heat wave, it doesn't feel like our immediate priority. Those prices are going to bite really hard, really soon. As individuals, what can we best do to try and mitigate how bad that's going to be?
Well, you were lucky we've got a certain amount of support from the government, but what's really in your gift is how much energy you use. Now, it might be the case that now's the time to fix the roof when the sun is shining, by which I mean energy efficiency. We've had both candidates in the Tory party leadership contest talk about it. Britain has got the oldest housing stock in Europe, right? And we can take pride, I think, in having built houses that were made to last. But those houses are drafty. They leak energy. And if you can plug those leaks, you're going to save up to £600 from your bill. So the message of yesteryear was switch energy supplier to get the best price. I think the message going forward is look for energy efficiency so as to reduce your energy usage.
OK. Well, fascinating talking to you. We'll say consumer champion. The company is How to Save It. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it. Thank you. With the time at 23 minutes past 6, we're going to take a break. And after that, we're going to bring you to a shop where everything is 20p. I kid you not. How does that work? We'll tell you right after the weather.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio,
On digital, absolutely everywhere.
we don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The First Minister of Northern Ireland, David Trimble, has died at the age of 77.
Now, to honour his life and service, the planned recall of Stormont Assembly is going to be postponed. Let's find out more. We can go live to Stormont now and speak to our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie. Dougie, good morning.
Good morning and welcome to Stormont Estate in Belfast. You're quite right, it will always be remembered here as the place that David Trimble and John Hume jointly put back together again. They both won the Nobel Peace Prize because of that 1998 agreement. But it was always in flux in the 4 years where Trimble was the First Minister. They argued over decommissioning and legacy, and strangely enough to this day, legacy still haunts the institutions behind us. I first met David Trimble in the late 80s in the Unionist Hall in Carryduff. He was a law lecturer and he always came across that way. And they always say that history repeats itself. Well, the Conservative Party could take a leaf out of the book of what happened to the Ulster Unionist Party right now. He didn't bring the right wing of his party with him, and he decided that it was better to expel those that were against him, including, it must be said, Sir William Wright, who came from the Vanguard movement with him in the late 70s. William Wright is buried later this week, and I think the irony of that is not lost. David Trimble was a man of peace. He believed that there could be a different way for Northern Ireland. There was decades of very, very bad violence here. I mean, in 1 year in 72, we were talking about the Bloody Friday. There was over 400 lives lost. So something had to give, and David Trimble did try to do exactly that. But in trying to ignore the right of the party, he cost the party their electoral mandate. And in 2005, I remember standing with Dennis Murray and Peter Robinson watching the Banbridge count of where he lost his Westminster seat to Simpson, and he had to be escorted out of the premises in an armoured car. Really, he then joined the Conservative Party later on and became a life peer. Behind me in the Senate chamber here is a painting on the wall of the first day of the Northern Ireland Assembly. And it's hard to believe it was that long ago, because the same problems have haunted it ever since. And when you look at that painting, there are very, very few left in it that were there on the first day. And that includes such people as Peter Robinson, Bob McCartney, and of course the Ulster Unionists themselves, who have now went down to about 9 seats from the majority that they held, and the SDLP are at 8 seats. But good times for Northern Ireland to see that Good Friday Agreement, but the same problems have haunted it since, and it's often said that if he had have put his heels in at the time and tried harder to get those things over the line that were haunting it now, that it would have been in a better place.
Thank you very much indeed, Lord David Trimble, who died yesterday. Thank you very much indeed, Dougie.
Now it's coming up to 6:30. Forget the pound shop. We'd like to introduce you to what we believe is the UK's cheapest shop.
OK, how low can you go?
Quite low.
50p?
Lower.
How could you go lower than 50p? We're talking about
20p. Everything.
Impossible.
Everything in the shop, 20 pence.
Well, the shop was run by a man called Stuart Nelson and his dad, Steve. They opened it 5 years ago. Cost of living squeeze, we all know about that. More and more people are turning to them naturally enough to make ends meet.
Well, Paul Hawkins went along to the 20p shop in Yorkshire to speak to Stuart and have a rummage through the bargains.
It's like a little car boot sale on the inside, but you don't have to bid for things, everything's just 20 pence each. We've got massive amounts of stuff. It changes every day as well.
For kids of a certain age, this is a DVD. Surely no one is going to buy one of these.
People still buy them today.
This is a blank one that someone's made themselves.
Yeah.
Amazing. There might be one in here where they've taped the radio. Right? Do you remember we used to do that?
Thank you.
And what sort of people come into shop?
We have everyone. Any different walks of life, millionaires, people in paid to paycheck, students coming out of Leeds, absolutely everyone.
£2 for the videos as well. Yeah, you've got 10 items, yes, so £2. Oh, is it 10 items? Yeah, everything's 20p, in 20p.
We've seen a big influx because of the cost of living going through the roof, that more people are coming to the shop. It helps people out at 20 pence a piece. They can go and get any essential items they need, any bits and pieces. You know, we've got a children's bike we sold this Monday, just gone, and 20 pence a piece, it's going to go to a little girl, and they're going to enjoy it.
Are you money laundering again?
Yeah. It's a wonderful little shop. You can find all sorts of little, treasures.
Do you like this shop?
Yeah. I like looking at the books. I'm a book reader, I'm not Kindle.
What's the best thing about it? The price. How do you make money when everything is 20p? Where the hell is the profit margin?
The profit margin is in, the shop, we buy everything a lot in wholesale. We buy massive amount of things to get in, 100,000 items at a time. We'll do job lots, we'll buy wherever we can if the margin's right.
And then over here, got records, vinyl, and there are some bargains that you could find here, right? Maybe stuff that's worth more than 20p.
Yeah. We had someone purchase a gold ring. There was £120, right? Retailed £120 or more, bought it for 20 pence because we had it with all costume jewellery. Like I say, anything that comes in goes out.
Did you know it was 120p when you put it out there?
We didn't know.
Have you got Eamonn Holmes' autobiography here? This Is My Life?
Probably somewhere.
It might be in here somewhere. People are still using these then?
Yeah.
You don't need Google Maps or Waze.
Got 25 inches.
It's all right, love. No hurry. It's not 25, it's 20.
Can you take it out?
Yeah.
Do you think if things keep going as they are, you might have to go become the 30p shop?
No, we're always the 20p shop. We'd love to have more space. Come 10 years' time, 20 years' time, I'd love to have a few little shops everywhere, so we're helping out a lot more people.
Paul Hawkins, GB News.
What did you buy, Paul? Don't tell me you didn't leave there with an armful of stuff. That's incredible.
He was really enjoying just being sent out to go shopping, basically.
But you couldn't resist, could you, if you were going around, and whether it was greeting cards or whether it was old records?
I think the greeting cards would be really useful.
How do they do that? 20p?
Well, they said they buy loads. Sometimes wholesale stock about 100,000 cards. I mean, that would take you a long time to sell them, even at 20p.
Well, I don't know. I think you go into a shop like that and you would just sort of get the bug. And you just say, I have to spend, I have to do this, whatever. But what an amazing concept, the 20p shop in Otley in Yorkshire. Coming up, we're going to be going through the newspapers. We've got Norman Baker and Emma Wolfe with those right after this. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Read all about it. Here come the papers in the company of the former Home Office Minister, Mr. Norman Baker, who is incidentally birthday boy today. We do want to say it's always exciting having a birthday, isn't it?
He's actually already been serenaded by Eamonn.
I have. It's quite astonishing, Eamonn, for you just saying happy birthday to me.
I'm going to get you a badge for later on, you know, just to put on there. And we've got the journalist and political commentator Emma Wolfe with us as well. Lovely to see you, Emma. Norman, it's you we're going to begin with, The Independent, and this is on the front page, and this is about levelling up, whether it exists or whether it doesn't exist.
It appears not to exist, according to The Independent, which has done this analysis, which shows that the gap between the rich, well, not just the rich, actually, between the North and the South has got worse under Boris Johnson's premiership, which, of course, is significant because there's a whole lot of votes to be won in so-called red wall seats, and if people in those seats believe that not only is levelling up not happening, but it's getting worse, levelling down really, then they may not want to vote Conservative again.
Norman, why does this happen? OK, so he makes an election pledge and whatever, and he's going to be there to level up and whatever. It turns out to be, does it turn out to be just talk, or do these things take time to actually kick in?
Well, there's some investment which is already happening and which cannot be undone, and which, for example, Crossrail in London, which is obviously counted in here as part of the investment in the South, a decision taken a very long time ago. So those things work through the system. But beyond that, you've got an analysis within government and the Department of Transport or within the Treasury, which looks at the cost-benefit ratio of any investment and concludes that you get more money for your buck in a way by investing in, say, London, than you do investing in Bolton. That's what the figures will show.
But
and
is part of this
it's
not
skewed.
just about morality and about doing the right thing and about realising there are certain parts of the country, the further north you go, which just don't have the same sort of infrastructure and facilities than maybe London does? Is it not just like you need to do the right thing?
Yeah, absolutely you do. And I think about those pacer trains that existed in the north for years, dreadful machines, buses on wheels, which are therefore about 30 years beyond their life expectancy. And they were allowed to carry on. They wouldn't have carried on in the south. They would have been got rid of a lot earlier. So, yes, there is that balance. You've also got the fact that the media is based largely in London these days, or always has been, actually. And therefore, what happens in London and the south east gets more coverage. Do you remember the 87 Great Storm? I remember that very well in the southeast when we lost a huge number of trees. That was all over the press and all over the newspapers and the media for days. Had that happened in Newcastle, it wouldn't have been there to the same extent at all. So the media skews things as well.
I have to say, throughout my whole career, 42 years of it, and, you know, this would be the same if I was from Glasgow, if I was from Newcastle, if I was from Liverpool. If you don't shout, you don't get.
That's right.
So for Northern Ireland and Belfast, I mean, producers who live in London or from London, they don't think about, well, how does the weather affect Belfast, or how, the Northern Ireland football team were playing last night, or whatever. It just isn't in the psyche. And if you're from the north, maybe you do fight for your area that bit more, but you have to.
You have to, absolutely you do. And I don't know, Northern Ireland didn't shout enough for its bridge, did it, between Northern Ireland and Scotland, the one that Boris was promising?
Yes. I mean, but that was never going to happen, was it?
No, I know.
That was just never going to happen.
Levelling up was mentioned by both of the candidates yesterday in the leadership contest. Emma, let's take a look at that and sort of the analysis, the fallout in the papers this morning. The Times front page describes the rivals as a bitter. It was personal yesterday.
It was. It's getting personal. It's despite Tory grandees calling for these blue-on-blue attacks to stop. Really, things are getting pretty hostile between the two of them, and increasingly personal, as you say.
Yes, I'm so easily offended. I mean, someone raises their voice against someone else, and it's all the end of the world.
It's not that. It's the fact that these are two very senior figures, you know, in government. They've both been part of the administration over the past few years, well, longer than that, and they are going to have to come together somehow. And the attacks are actually pretty much catnip to Labour. The things they're saying to each other about, you know, you're going to be making households poorer, things like that. That's all going to be used later on in what, 24 months' time.
I always look at football managers and they say the most dire, awful things about each other, right? And then they all put their arms around each other and they all hug. Of
course, but Liz Truss referred to Sunak's aggressive mansplaining, his shouty private school behaviour. You know, it is quite personal. There's been references to Sunak's expensive Prada suits, which allegedly cost £3,500. So it is quite personal. It isn't just policy disagreements, which one would hope for and expect.
Yes, it's their wardrobes, it's the schools that they went to. Their background is something that both of them are leaning on. Rishi Sunak particularly talking about his childhood, his upbringing. How important do you think that actually is in trying to appeal to the Conservative Party membership?
Well, he's playing it for all he can get. He's referring repeatedly to having grown up working in the pharmacy, in the parents' pharmacy in Southampton and all of that. But he's still coming across as very entitled, very slick, very California, you know, the sliders and the coffee warmers and all of that stuff. The general perception, and I know they don't get a vote, but the general perception amongst the public is he is a billionaire who is out of touch, who doesn't get it. In the non-dom status of his wife and all of that hasn't gone away. People haven't forgotten that. So I think that Rishi Sunak is still seen as very, very, you know, shiny and not particularly in touch with people who are facing a cost of living crisis.
It's interesting you say that. But even people who face a cost of living crisis, they like new shoes, they like nice things, they like, you know, and I don't begrudge the man if he wants to buy himself a nice pair of shoes, an expensive pair of shoes with his hard-earned money. I think that's totally up to him how he spends.
Not sure how hard-earned it is, but anyway.
Oh, do you not, Emma? See, that's bitchy.
Okay, really, Eamonn, does he work harder than someone stacking shelves for £9 an hour?
Well, do you know what? I think he does work very hard. I think he does. But I agree with you. I look at people who do jobs like that, and I thank God every day that I don't have to do it, and they're better people than me. And I always say, and I've said on this programme, people who clean loos, dig holes in the road,
drive the buses, stack the shelves, do the things that we need, pick up the rubbish, all of that.
And they're treated badly by society when they should be paid
Someone like
more.
Rishi Sunak is paid hundreds of times more than they are. And yeah, they work. Of course, politicians, some of them work hard, but I do not think you can pretend that there is any kind of equality in pay amongst those sectors.
Okay.
Norman, for you, Rishi Sunak's wealth about 2 months ago became a really big problem for him, but then the sort of collapse of Boris Johnson's leadership meant it's sort of fallen off the agenda a bit. But if you're talking to someone like Emma, it's still front and centre.
Well, it is, and is he out of touch? Perhaps he is. All I would say in defence, if you like, is that look at the... I remember the last Labour government, and they had a succession of agriculture ministers, and actually the best one by far was Nick Brown, who represented Newcastle upon Tyne Central, so with no farms anywhere in sight. So you don't necessarily have to be in the right place historically in order to do your job well. So we'll see what he says. And Rishi Sunak himself said it wasn't about your bank balance, it's about your character, and I think that's probably true. But of course, he's got a standing start in money terms, and Liz Truss probably has a standing start in terms of her background.
Well, let's talk about the front page of the Daily Mail if we can, because this time tomorrow there's going to be one topic on the agenda, and it's going to be the rail strikes. And Liz Truss says, I'm going to curb these militant unions.
Well, there's two things to say here, I think. The first one is that the Daily Mail is mixing up the reporting of news with its editorial line. This
never happened before.
Well, it's happening big time now, because it's had a succession of stories which promoted Boris Johnson, that was their view. Now it's got a succession of stories which are promoting Liz Truss and rubbishing Rishi Sunak. You know, that's their view, that's fine, they're entitled to their view, but it should be an editorial comment, not on the front page presenting itself as news. So that's the first point I want to make. The second point I would say is that in terms of curbing unions, look, we have got rail strikes coming up. I don't think necessarily the rail unions are being very sensible about this. They are potentially alienating the public at large, who are people they ought to get on board on their side. There is a case, of course, for a decent pay rise for people working on the railways, but withdrawing services and leaving people who sometimes are quite low paid and have to get the train to get to work is not necessarily a very sensible strategy to follow.
But then what is the science of getting yourself better paying conditions without going on strike? What do you think the process should be?
Well, I mean, for example, they could stand at railway. They could start by standing at railway stations, handing out leaflets to the public and saying, "This is what we're leaving. This is what's happened to our wages. This is what's happened to I don't know, government ministers' wages or whatever." They could try and win them over. They could actually engage them, make them laugh. They could do something which actually generates public support for their campaign. This is a very kind of hard, old-fashioned way of undertaking your campaign. What I would say, though, however, is that the plan to curb so-called militant unions, which is on the front page of the Mail, you know, I think what's happening with this leadership campaign between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, and indeed before that, before the others were eliminated, was that they're playing not to the public at large. They're playing to the 0.003% of the population who are Tory party members and who will decide who the next Prime Minister is. And those people are by and large well off. They're by and large in the south. They're by and large elderly, and they're by and large quite right wing. And I think they're ending up making pledges and promises to win the election, which actually don't necessarily believe in themselves.
Which may then be abandoned, yes.
Yes.
We've got a campaign front page of the Mirror, Emma, and it's about children can buy cheap knives. We're talking about big, brutal knives here in high street stores with comparative ease.
Yep. This is an investigation by the Mirror. Really important, actually. They sent an undercover reporter, 16-year-old girl, Martha, into 23 stores, and in 15 of those high street stores, she was able to buy fairly hefty blades. I don't know if you can see that at the front, page 4 or 5 of the Mirror.
Cool. But they're also kitchen utensils.
They are kitchen utensils. So but their undercover reporter was not asked for ID. He was not even asked for her age.
Yes.
These were the price of a soft drink. Basically, and she was able to buy these in fairly mainstream stores across the UK.
What's the answer?
Well, we have a crisis. What the answer is that you check people who are buying knives. I'm afraid, of course, it's a hassle for the rest of us. But if you want to buy a hefty blade like this, I'm afraid there needs to be, maybe the store manager has to come in the same way that when you buy booze, someone will have to come and remove the security tag nowadays.
Yes,
I think actually anyone who obviously looks under the age of 30, maybe someone needs to come down from the main office or something and check them, because you simply cannot have teenagers with knife crime up 30% since 2011. I think I've got that figure right, yeah. And children are being killed on the streets. To have children, teenagers, you know what happens if one teenager stupidly, and everybody does stupid things as kids, but if one teenager pulls out a knife, things get very, very dangerous very quickly. So I'm afraid it's a bore for everyone else, but you just need to be, I think there needs to be serious checks on this.
Quite depressing, yeah, but good investigation there, food for thought.
Let's move on to another story that's on the front page of The Guardian, and it's the sort of fallout of the investigation by The Guardian and the BBC, a joint investigation into the DJ Tim Westwood, and it appears from this report that someone tried to raise the alarm earlier.
Well, they raised the alarm about bullying, not just about alleged sexual impropriety, which is what the story was previously. This is a further dimension to it, if you like. And, well, I mean, the BBC is busy beating itself up, I mean, over matters that are related to the 1990s, in the same way as they had to deal with Martin Bashir and Princess Diana. It's all quite historical. I mean, clearly there were issues here when they failed to, on the face of it, they failed to follow through complaints about bullying, which is clearly a failure of the BBC. Having said that, on GB News yesterday, there was a nurse on who was alleging bullying within the NHS. And I just think that any large organisation beyond a particular size is going to have this sort of event taking place. The issue is not whether you can eliminate bullying, the issue is whether you can identify quickly enough and deal with the perpetrators.
Emma, let's go to the Financial Times front page there, and they are concerned about this Nord Stream 1 gas pipeline.
So Nord Stream 1 is Russia's largest gas pipeline, and this week they've announced, in fact tomorrow, they're cutting supplies through Gazprom, their state-owned energy company. They're cutting supplies to just 20% of capacity to Germany. They've already cut the capacity to 40%, so it's now down to 20%, so it's a fifth of capacity. This is actually threatening to leave Germany and possibly Europe in a real energy crisis this winter. As we head into winter, I mean, could things get more grim generally in terms of panic and worry about energy? This is another sign that Russia may be weaponizing their energy supply. And Germany are already on the brink of major recession. And this is really, really bad news for Germany and for Europe, and for wider Europe.
Okay. And for us, if I may say so, because we import electricity from Europe. We had to get some emergency electricity from Belgium the other day. And if Europe's going to be very short of gas, it's going to be wanting to export lots of electricity to the UK.
Right, sobering stuff. Norman Baker, Emma Wolfe, thank you both very much indeed. The guys are going to be back in 40 minutes' time with more from the papers. News-wise, here's what's happening on this Tuesday morning.
Archie Battersbee's parents are going to ask the European Court of Human Rights to intervene after they lost their latest legal battle to keep Archie on life support. Well, the 12-year-old hasn't regained consciousness since suffering an accident at home 3 months ago.
Tributes are being paid following the death of the former Ulster Unionist Party leader, Lord David Trimble, who was one of the principal architects of the Good Friday Agreement. Boris Johnson said Trimble's contribution to peace will never be forgotten, whilst the former Prime Minister Tony Blair described his efforts as immense.
England faces a drought in August if the hot and dry weather continues. DEFRA and Environment Agency officials are meeting with water companies today to discuss how we can protect our water supplies.
So, the Eurovision Song Contest next year is going to be held somewhere within the UK, but where will that be? So, let's talk to Stephanie Techina, showbiz reporter, on this one. So, how has all of this come about?
Well, Ukraine won the Eurovision, rightly so, with the Kalush Orchestra. And last month, the EBU, the European Broadcasting Union, started talks with BBC about whether we could potentially host it, because due to the ongoing war in Russia, it would not be safe to hold the Eurovision. So So they've been having conversations for the past month, and yesterday it was confirmed that we will host it. The reason why it's come to us is because we came second with Sam Ryder with his song Space Rider. It's the best result we've had in over 20 years. So now we will be hosting it, and now we're looking for a city that will host it. But there is a criteria. We need a city that has a venue that can host 10,000 people. It's close to an international airport, and also it's got hotels which can host delegates as well.
Belfast.
I think it should be Belfast. I'm a Londoner and I don't want it in London. I'm like, London's been said, done to death. Let's pick somewhere new and
it could be
exciting.
Glasgow, could be Liverpool,
Yeah.
got an amazing music heritage. It could be
Definitely,
Leeds.
yeah.
It could Birmingham.
Shall I tell you the top three
Yeah,
runners
okay.
so
Yes,
far?
please.
So London, of course, has put their name in the ring. We've got Sheffield and we've got Manchester, but there's much more to come. So during the month, later on in the month, the BBC will be revealing the long form of names that will be potentials to host it.
And as much as this might be really exciting, particularly for Eurovision fans, I think we've hosted it about 8 times before.
Have.
It comes at a cost, and who pays for that?
Well, that's what the BBC put in their press release yesterday. They said they're looking at ways to how we can fund it, and that will be great value for the licence fee payer. But also, I think it's very much going to be a collaboration. So they are going to be going to other members of the EBU to see if they could also support as well. So we have, when it comes to Eurovision, we have the Grand Five. We've got England, we've got Spain, Germany, France. They're like the top names who give the most financial backing for the Eurovision Song Contest. So I can imagine they're going to be donating some money towards it as well.
So would it have does it then the whole feel and mood of the competition change? Does it become British, or will there still be, I mean, Ukraine did win.
It's very much still a Ukrainian affair. So even though we are hosting it, we are going to be co-hosting it with the Ukrainian broadcaster UAPBC. So they're very much going to have creative control of the show next year. So hopefully it will have a majority of Ukrainian favour, but it's just going to be on British soil.
Because this year's competition, I mean, Ukraine were broadcasting from a bunker, basically. It was quite extraordinary that they just thought, well, we're not going to let the war mean we don't sort of participate at all. We'll continue in this kind of capacity. And Nadine Dorris said yesterday, and so did Boris Johnson, they said, look, the way we do this, we are really going to celebrate Ukrainian creativity. It's going to be a real partnership between the two countries.
And, you know, it's been amazing, Rosie, over the past few months, seeing the great allyship between Britain and Ukraine. So that's why I think it's a very natural fit. And I think Ukraine as well, the tenacity of the country has just been amazing. And we're all hoping by next year, when it is ready to be hosted, there'll be at least a bit more peace there. And hopefully they might even win it again in 2024. It might go to Ukraine.
This is what I'm thinking. If they win it and the war still happening, then it just ends up being passed around. They keep winning it because people support them, and it's just sort of passed around. But then I suppose it's passing the message around and keeping the awareness there, and keeping Ukraine very much in the forefront of our minds.
Definitely. As with most wars, music is always that message of solidarity and unity. So I think the best way people showed their support this year was voting for Ukraine. But I thought they were amazing, the Kalush Orchestra. They had my vote anyway.
No. OK, Stephanie. You always have my vote, you know that.
Thank you. You don't text or call me, Eamonn.
Well, I don't care what they all say about you. I'm your big supporter.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Stephanie Tetchy there, showbiz reporter. We'll take a break after that.
Yeah, lots more to come on last night's fiery leadership debate. That's after the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Some areas of cloud around at first, especially central and southern parts of the UK, but sunny spells will develop. And apart from a few showers, many places will have a dry day. High pressure is moving in from the west. The low pressure is still departing to the east into Scandinavia. And a weather front has moved south across the country overnight. Now, this is now a weak feature, but it's brought a legacy of cloud for northern England into the Midlands, southern counties as well. It will take some time for that cloud to break up and for sunny spells to develop, but they will. And apart from a few showers across central areas and for the north of Scotland as well, many places will have a dry day. And with the sunny spells developing, with winds turning lighter, well, it'll feel warm with highs of 22 to 25 Celsius in the south, high teens and around 20 Celsius at best in the north. Through the evening, the cloud disappears, and with lengthy clear spells overnight and with light winds, well, it's going to be a cool night once again. I think in towns and cities, those temperatures will hold up at around 11, 12, 13 Celsius. But in sheltered parts, especially in the countryside, temperatures down to 5 to 8 Celsius. So a fresh start to tomorrow, but actually plenty of sunshine first thing. In fact, it looks like a sunny day for many, especially in the north, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, seeing those sunny spells continuing. But further south, some lively showers will break out and drift north into Wales and the Midlands by the afternoon. Away from those showers, temperatures faring well once again, with highs of 22 or 23 Celsius. Thursday sees further showers, especially in the north and the west. Likewise on Friday, but at the same time there will be some sunny spells and it will start to warm up as well.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Liz Truss accuses Rishi Sunak of peddling Project Fear as they clash during the latest TV debate.
Hello there, very good morning to you. 7 o'clock, Tuesday, 26th of July. Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Rosie Wright. Thank you very much indeed for your company.
Right, here's what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss went head-to-head last night in a televised leadership debate that saw the candidates trade blows over tax cuts, inflation, China and defence.
The two Conservative rivals also promised to curb the power of unions ahead of another walkout by rail workers tomorrow.
Negligence from the energy regulator Ofgem has left consumers picking up the tab for failed energy companies. According to a new report from MPs, millions of people will be pushed into unmanageable debt without government support on energy bills.
And the former First Minister of Northern Ireland, David Trimble, has died at the age of 77. He played a key role in the Good Friday Agreement, earning him a joint Nobel Peace Prize.
Right, please do get in touch. Particularly, we've got a poll running on our Twitter page at GB News. Have a look. Who do you think came out on top in yesterday's first televised head-to-head?
A lot of you thought Rishi was a bit shouty, right? You were watching last night, like Yvonne. My vote is for Liz Truss. Rishi was plain rude, shouting over Liz, not giving her time to explain. I thought he was hyped up a bit. I thought he was, he came out the first half hour and he was all very, very strong and strident. Then it calmed down after that. But it was a bit shouty.
It's just the interrupting is often unnecessary. Let us know what you think. You can email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can vote in our poll. Head over to our Twitter @gbnews.
So, as we've been discussing, the Conservative leadership candidates traded blows in TV debate on the BBC last night. It saw Rishi Sunak attempt to close the gap on Liz Truss, who, amongst members, is the front runner.
Well, the two candidates clashed on tax cuts, China, the cost of living crisis, defence, the climate, and I think we could describe it as sort of increasingly fiery exchanges. Let's take a look.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. So I'm not putting it on the never, never. I would start paying it down in 3 years.
Liz, that's simply not right. You promised almost £40 billion of unfunded tax cuts, £40 billion more borrowing. That is the country's credit card. It's our children and grandchildren, everyone here's kids, who are going to have to pick up the tab for that.
Rishi, that is not true.
There's nothing Conservative about doing that.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. I don't believe this negative, declinist language.
It's your own
that we're
economic
hearing.
advisor, Liz. It's not mine. It's your own advisor.
I have lots of economists that are backing my plans. Everybody thinks that putting up taxes at this moment is going to hurt the economy.
Do you know what mortgage rates are in the US at the moment? Do you want to use them as an example? Their mortgage rates are almost 50% higher than mortgage rates in this country because they're borrowing so much.
I'm sorry, this
Canada.
is scaremongering.
Canada actually
this is Project Fear.
Liz, I remember the referendum campaign. I remember the referendum campaign, and there were only one of us who was on the side of Remain and Project Fear, and it was you, not me. Okay. And you talk about this.
Maybe I've learnt from that.
What we do need to do is acknowledge that China is a threat to our national security. It's a threat to our economic security. And that's why, as Chancellor, I was pleased that we could put forward something called the National Security and Investment Bill. We also need to stand up for our values. And for example, when it came to Hong Kong, I was pleased to ensure that we put the funding in place to welcome to this country thousands of fleeing who wanted to leave Hong Kong.
Rishi, I challenged you on this in the debate last week. As recently as a month ago, you were pushing for closer trade relationships with China. This is not something you've advocated in government. I'm delighted that you've come round to my way of thinking.
So what way are you thinking? A poll by Opinion last night after the debate found that Sunak narrowly won amongst viewers in general, but Liz Truss stayed well ahead amongst Conservative voters.
Let's find out more. Political reporter at The Eye, Chloe Chaplin, joins us in the studio. Chloe, it was at times the debate a little bit awkward, clunky, but also quite combative.
Yes, I think Rishi Sunak has definitely seen some of the Conservative membership polls, which at the moment put Liz Truss ahead. And you got the impression that he was very much ready to come out of the block straight away in the debate. The first half of it, he was pretty punchy, interrupting her quite a lot. That was noticed by Liz's team, who weren't very happy about it. I think he kind of calmed down in the second half, but yeah, he was definitely trying to make his mark. I mean, the ballot papers go out from next week, so this is almost the last real opportunity that they have on a kind of televised debate to actually really make their mark. So you can see why he would be in a rush to create some impact.
So they continue tonight, I believe. There's another debate.
Yes, there's a Sun debate this evening.
Yeah, why bother? What more is there to say?
Well, it's interesting because they both pulled out of another debate last week over apparently concerns that was becoming a bit too toxic, and yet I think anybody watching that debate last night / reading any of the newspapers over the weekend would argue, well, if you were concerned about the debate being so toxic, why have you continued as you have been? So tonight they are going to be answering questions from Sun readers, so maybe there'll be some more specific questions there. And then there's also the hustings in Leeds on Thursday, which is really important because that's the Tory membership.
Can you really imagine, come the sort of first week of September, that these two people work together in a sort of united Conservative Party?
It's quite surreal, isn't it? Because they were literally stood live on television offering each other a job in their future governments.
and their campaign teams were briefing journalists at almost the exact time, saying, I think Liz's campaign team said that Rishi was not fit for office due to the way that he behaved in the debate last night. So it's hard to tell the difference between what's genuine and what's just for show.
Viewers and listeners will be, they'll be taking it on board who seems to be the most competent, who is the safest pair of hands, who has got a vision for the future. Did either of the two of them stand out on that front?
I think I was actually slightly disappointed about some of the lack of policy detail last night. It was quite high-level stuff, and there were viewers asking very specific questions. Audience members asking very specific questions about, cost of living. What are you going to do about this? And a lot of the response was, we'll have to wait and see from Rishi and from Liz. Other than the national insurance reversal, she didn't really come up with anything else. So I'd like to see in the debates this week and the hustings a little bit more granular level detail as to what they're going to do kind of in day one of being in number 10.
Do you think they're going to provide that information? Because is that really what's going to secure them the votes from the Conservative Party members?
Well, that is the difficult one. And also, as it has been pointed out, with things like cost of living, it can often be a wait-and-see situation. But I think they're having to really dance on the head of a pin between appealing to the wider public and appealing to the Conservative membership. Because as far as the Conservative membership is concerned, if they want to win the next general election, they will need a candidate who's popular with the country as a whole. But obviously, it's the members themselves who decide.
OK, well, we've got... we don't have Simon Clarke yet. Sorry, I'm just about to introduce Simon Clarke, who's standing by Liz Truss on all of this. But what are the points that, Chloe, you would take away from all of this?
From the debate last night, what was particularly interesting was questions about whether they would give Boris Johnson a job in their future government. Liz Truss made a very interesting remark when she said, I don't think he would want a job in government. So I don't know what private conversations she's been having with him. Maybe suggests that he might be stepping away.
She also scored him 7 out of 10 for his effectiveness as Prime Minister, where Sunak didn't commit himself at all.
Well, he did say... Classic politician. He kind of broke up the question and he said on Brexit, and I think either COVID or vaccines, gave him a 10 out of 10. And actually, there were 3 or 4 applauses during the night, and one of them was for Boris Johnson.
When they said he got Brexit done, I mean, they've been able... That will, unfortunately, start getting quite tired as time goes on. Look, Liz says, thank you for getting in touch, my gut feeling is that Mr Sunak is not fully committed to this country. If he doesn't become Prime Minister, he'll stand down at the next election and go to America. Just very briefly, Chloe, how much do you think he's been tarred by the green card saga that sort of 2-3 months ago was sort of front page news?
I do think it's going to be a difficult one for him to shake off, and it could be something that comes back to haunt him later down the line.
Chloe, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chloe. Thank you very much indeed. So what do you think? What did you make of the debate last night? Who is your winner? So far, 82% of you say Liz Truss, which is quite interesting because that's exactly what the figure that was last week for Liz Truss. Last Thursday was 82% as well. 18% left then to vote for Rishi Sunak. That is a big difference there. So cast a vote on the Twitter poll at GB News. It's not scientific, but it's interesting. We'll reveal the final results later on towards the end of the programme, but we'll be updating you as the programme progresses.
Right now it's 11 minutes past 7, and the Bank of England is considering steeper interest rates to reduce fears that inflation could soar to 15%.
Well, some economists have said this may lead to a property crash. Kunle Barker joins us now. He's a property expert to talk about these predictions. And Kunle, this is the big worry that a lot of people have, but inflation has got to be kept in check. What do you think?
I think interest rate rises are a blunt tool normally used to keep interest rates under control. The slight issue is that it's quite unique at the moment because the real drivers for inflation at the moment are to do with things that haven't happened before. So they're to do with Brexit, they're to do with COVID, they're to do with the war in Ukraine. All of these things are adding household costs to everybody's budgets. Now, the problem is that interest rates just increase that. So the real problem is about affordability. Is will people be able to afford mortgages? Will they pass tests to be able to actually get a mortgage? And actually, and the real problem, the one that's really concerning, is will they be able to afford to actually heat their homes, feed themselves, and actually pay those mortgages?
Yeah. The thing is, all those dynamics you talked about there, the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, there is so much chatter about a looming crash in the housing market, and none of those monumental shifts to our society have yet created it. So is one on the horizon?
It may well have already happened, because a lot of mortgage offers last for almost 6 months now. So there could be the people now buying houses who probably passed affordability checks back at the beginning of the year. So we won't see a dip off in demand, which is what...
Because they've got low interest rate mortgages.
Correct. So they passed the affordability test. Because right now, with interest rates going up and house price, and fuel costs and cost of living going up, that affects your affordability. So lots of people now, today, probably won't be able to afford certainly the mortgage they wanted to, that they could have afforded back in February.
But I mean, if I was in the housing market now, my big worry would be buying at the top of the market and then a crash happening, and if so, what size of a crash happening come the new year?
That's difficult, and unfortunately that's what I can't tell you, how big the crash will be. I predict certainly a slowdown in the market, maybe a slight normalisation. Perversely, some people might think that's what we need, because the house price are out of control at the moment.
One of the biggest problems is lack of stock.
Correct. And that's also, which may help abate a serious crash, because it's all about demand. So the demand will always be high in the UK for homes, because we don't have enough stock. So there's all these factors all reacting with each other, but it's quite a unique circumstance. So it's very difficult to say exactly what will happen, but there will certainly be a slowdown.
So you'd have to be brave to get involved in the housing market at the moment. You'd also have to know that your job was secure, that you've got a certain amount of financial muscle.
Yeah, I think be sensible. Make sure you're not overpaying. Property...
Of course you're overpaying. When are you underpaying?
Well, make sure you're paying a fair price, a price that's right for that house. Because, historically, over a long enough time period, property is a great investment, one of the safest investments out there. So, but you make a good point about buying at the top of the market. Nobody really wants to do that. So just make sure it's what you can afford. Make sure you're paying the right price for your home, and over a long enough period, you should be okay.
Kunle Barker, thank you very much indeed for your take on things. Kunle's a property expert, and that's his take. Your views very much welcome and appreciated. gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet at gbnews. Newswise, here's what's happening.
It's 7:15. MPs are criticising the government over its handling of the coronavirus traffic light system, which you'll remember set the rules for those arriving into the UK. The Public Accounts Committee says nearly £500 million was spent on the scheme. Only 2% of those required to quarantine in hotels then actually tested positive for COVID.
Tributes are being paid following the death of the former Ulster Unionist Party leader, Lord David Trimble, who was a former First Minister in Northern Ireland, the first First Minister in Northern Ireland, one of the principal architects of the Good Friday Agreement. Boris Johnson said Trimble's contribution to peace will never be forgotten. Former Prime Minister Tony Blair described his efforts as immense.
England faces a drought in August if the hot and dry weather continues. It's DEFRA and Environment Agency officials. They're meeting with water companies today to discuss how to protect our water supplies. 16 minutes past 7. We've been sort of unpacking and unpicking the intricacies of some of the debate last night, the first head-to-head between Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, and a mixed reception amongst GB News viewers.
Yeah, a lot of people thought Rishi Sunak was too rehearsed, too pumped up, and therefore didn't let his opponent speak very much. But then that's what the debate is all about. I don't see the problem myself. I mean, I think it's, they're enemies at this stage. They will eventually work together, but if they agreed, we wouldn't be having these debates, would we?
Can you imagine having a colleague and having those types of public, bitter conversations?
Yes, of course. If you're a football manager, football player, whatever, you have those conversations all the time. There's certain jobs and areas which are more adversarial than others. So yes, absolutely, that is real life. That is real life, to argue and debate with someone and then to say, right, OK, let's get down to business and do this.
I think there's arguing and debate, and then there's personal gripes, talking about people's background, their education, their wardrobe, their integrity.
You can't tell me you don't look at someone and judge them by their hairstyle, their wardrobe.
I thought you were about to start having an argument with me.
How could anybody have an argument with you?
Quite easily, I'm afraid.
No. The cut and thrust of it doesn't worry me. I'd be more worried. You've got to, someone who doesn't have enemies is a really dull, boring person in my view. And you shouldn't be afraid to have confrontation, because there are a lot of hideous, horrible people in the world. And if you didn't have a confrontation with them, then I think you're just sort of a bit of a doormat, really.
Well, Keith says, very good morning to you, Keith. Sunak's behaviour was appalling, shouting Truss and everyone else down.
I think he was too, hyped up. I think what he does is, people say that he's polished. He's not polished, he's rehearsed. And, this business where he turns to look down the camera and whatever, and then the director cuts off him. I mean, he'd been told to do certain things to appeal to people. But by and large, you just have to judge who you believe the most, who is most capable, who actually can get the job done, as Boris would say. And that's what you've got to determine. The Conservative Party, do they elect a leader for their party, or do they elect a winning Prime Minister? I suppose that's what they've got to decide.
Archie says he came across as arrogant, not a good look, not something I want in a leader.
But he could also say he came across as smart and assured and very definite about knowing what he wanted. I mean, I think his stance is harder than Liz Truss's stance. Liz Truss's stance is telling us all what we want to hear. There will be tax cuts and we're going to help you on this front and that front, which, I mean, who doesn't want that? You think that's great. He's serving up a big dollop of medicine that very few of us want to swallow. So I suppose that's the choice at the end of the day.
Lynn makes a really interesting point. Liz Truss was ahead of Sunak and widened the gap last night, then says Labour has nothing to do with this vote, but would love Sunak to win.
Why?
Because they know they can beat him in an election and Liz will knock the socks off Starmer.
OK, that's all good theories there. But there's no doubt, as it stands at the moment, there is still a small lead for Liz Truss amongst Conservative Party membership people. So that's the way it is. Keep the views coming in. GB News at what is it? I never know that. GB Views at gbnews.uk. You're very good at getting in touch with us, so you can tweet at GB News as well. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk about sport. Cristiano Ronaldo, he makes the front page of the papers today, and he makes the back pages of the papers as well. And I, for one, as a Man United supporter, am getting a bit fed up with it. Back with Aidan McGee, talking about that after this.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Some areas of cloud around at first, especially central and southern parts of the UK, but sunny spells will develop. And apart from a few showers, many places will have a dry day. High pressure is moving in from the west. The low pressure is still departing to the east into Scandinavia. And a weather front has moved south across the country overnight. Now, this is now a weak feature, but it's brought a legacy of cloud for northern England into the Midlands, southern counties as well. It will take some time for that cloud to break up and for sunny spells to develop, but they will. And apart from a few showers across central areas and for the north of Scotland as well, many places will have a dry day. And with the sunny spells developing, with winds turning lighter, well, it'll feel warm with highs of 22 to 25 Celsius in the south, high teens and around 20 Celsius at best in the north. Through the evening, the cloud disappears, and with lengthy clear spells overnight and with light winds, well, it's going to be a cool night once again. I think in towns and cities, those temperatures will hold up at around 11, 12, 13 Celsius. But in sheltered parts, especially in the countryside, temperatures down to 5 to 8 Celsius. So a fresh start to tomorrow, but actually plenty of sunshine first thing. In fact, it looks like a sunny day for many, especially in the north, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, seeing those sunny spells continuing. But further south, some lively showers will break out and drift north into Wales and the Midlands by the afternoon. Away from those showers, temperatures faring well once again, with highs of 22 or 23 Celsius. Thursday sees further showers, especially in the north and the west. Likewise on Friday, but at the same time there will be some sunny spells and it will start to warm up as well.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
25 minutes past 7. Welcome back to breakfast. Still to come here.
Doesn't time fly? 25 past 7. There's me thinking, goodness me, it must only be 6:15, but there we go.
We've only got 2 hours left of us.
Well.
We are unpicking the debate of last night, and particularly what did the Labour Party think of last night's, I think, head-to-head. We'll ask their shadow financial secretary at 7:45.
Coming up an hour after that, we've got Archie Battersbee's mother. His parents have lost that appeal against the decision to end life support treatment. We will speak to Holly, his mum, at a very raw time, and she's considering whether to go to the European Court of Human Rights now. And you can get involved in this. Give us your view about the Archie situation. Give us your view about anything that's happening, anything that matters to you. If it matters to you, it matters to us. GB Views at gbnews.uk. You can also tweet at GB News. Good to have your views. Making the back pages this morning, you've got Cristiano Ronaldo on the front and on the back of the Sun. Ron his way, Man United showdown, they say on the front, and then the back is let me go. He will reject a loan move, and Ten Hag bid to keep him. So this is, we talk about civil war within the Conservative Party, this is civil war within Manchester United as well. Just very, very unfortunate situations. He says he wants to play Champions League football. Yeah, rub it in, why don't you? Right. Women's Euro semi-final, England-Sweden tonight. OK, so it's there. You'll get it on most of the back pages. This is the Express take on it, Swede Dreams. It also covers a recent report, the report this week, which claims Scottish cricket was rife with racism. as well. The Mirror leads with "Watch Us Roar" as fans are urged to get behind the Lionesses tonight. Aidan McGee now with his take on that. It is a big thing, and it's very doable for England, isn't it?
Certainly is. I mean, my criticism at the start of the tournament was that the quality was diluted. So we saw Norway, ranked 11th in the world, spanked 8-0 by England. They were beaten 7-0 by Holland, who was slightly above them in the rankings just before that. We saw Northern Ireland, who only went professional in January, being beaten quite comfortably down at Southampton by England by 5-0. Now, look, we understand that tournaments get stronger and get tougher as they go along, the deeper you go. And we've ended up with the best 4 teams in Europe taking part in the semi-finals. Sweden, though, is the litmus test for England. Sweden, I'm OK, they haven't won the tournament since 1984. That was a long, long time ago. However, they're the second team ranked in the world. That means they're the best in Europe. I still don't fancy Sweden's chances in a rarefied atmosphere at Sheffield United, 32,000 crowd at Bramall Lane this evening, because I think England elsewhere in Europe is a different proposition to England in front of their own fans, especially given the momentum that the team has gained over the course of this tournament. Now, the big players have come to the party. The manager, Sarina Weigmann, the head coach, rather, the German lady, she has insisted that every single victory is enjoyed after every game. So that's contributed to the momentum. They even started talking about the effect they can have on lifting the mood of the nation in the view of the cost of living crisis. I'm not really sure how it solves people's electricity bills, but nonetheless...
Yeah, but it's escape, isn't it?
Of course it's an escape, yeah, of course. And look, the scheduling has been excellent. They've been lucky because the Men's World Cup this year is not happening until September, so you've got that out of the way. Wimbledon's finished. There's no Olympics this year. The Commonwealth Games doesn't start until next week. So they've been fortunate with the scheduling. They've also been very intelligent, the organisers, in the way they've structured the pricing of the tickets. Now, £15, £10, £5, that's how you fill a stadium. They could have been greedy and said, well, OK, we're going to go to these blue-chip stadiums, the Premier League stadiums. Obviously, Sheffield United was a Premier League stadium until 2 seasons ago. They could have said, look, you know, it costs a lot of money to put the lights on, it costs a lot of money to get staff there, and, OK, let's charge 30, 40 quid or whatever. But they've been sensible and they've got bums on seats, and it's always better to have people in the stadium cheering on the team. It would not be a good look, Eamonn, if we got to the quarterfinals, semi-finals and final.
Stadium.
Exactly. We've seen it happen so many times. It used to be with England. England friendlies, you used to get just a load of kids screaming in there, didn't you?
So Sweden have got to go to Sheffield on a Tuesday night and get a result.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way of putting it. But I mean, you need to consider that Sweden have had tremendous joy against England in the last few years. I mean, going back 15, 16 years, they've played 26 times. Yes. They've only lost to England 3 times. Sweden have won 15 of those, the rest of them obviously being draws. But Sweden have got a very strong league system. They've been doing this for a number of years. They are not mugs in any way, shape or form. They're going to have to come up with a plan.
England aren't mugs in the Euros.
No, certainly not. Certainly not. Look,
final.
Yes, exactly. But I mean, the one thing that might play into England's hands here is that Sweden seemed, for all their... So they've got this world ranking based on consistency in a number of games, but they haven't crossed the line in a major tournament. They seem to have a mental block right at the end, a bit like when England go to penalties or whatever, that kind of thing.
Well,
so
good. Let's hope that mental block stays.
Yeah, exactly. We'll know tomorrow.
So there it is, the kick-off, the big game. It's Bramall Lane in Sheffield tonight. 8 o'clock is the kick-off. It's on your telly box on the BBC tonight. Look, let's get into this transfer news. Ronaldo, what are you hearing? What's going on? Explain this to us.
Well, there was a report over the weekend. I mean, look, the first thing, we spoke about it a bit off air, didn't we? I mean, he's not kicked a ball for all summer.
Yeah.
The Premier League...
He has been training.
Yeah, he's been training, but it's different to getting out on the grass with a ball, meeting your new teammates. Not that United have made particularly loads of new signings, but the season kicks off in, a week and a half's time. You know, we've had this... It's a problem this year because the season kicks off slightly early because of the World Cup. We've had certain teams being vaccinated and playing friendlies in different countries, the other half of the squad. It hasn't afflicted Man United particularly, but they still haven't had their star performer in their ranks.
I tell you, Aidan, how it affects Man United. It affects supporters. People want to buy their shirts and they want to get their new kit and they want to get it for their kids and whatever it is, and they want to put the name Ronaldo and they want to put number 7 on the back.
Yeah.
And they're all, I mean, what is it? It costs you practically 100 quid to get all that done for a shirt. And it seems a simple thing, but it's a big earner for United. It's also a big earner in terms of sponsors who are behind Ronaldo, who signed up because he was going to play.
Well, he's there. They've got huge interests in terms of... I mean, TeamViewer are one of the main shirt sponsor, one of the ones who voiced concerns privately that he's not going to be there. They signed up on the basis that he was signing a 2-year contract and he had an option to extend. Yeah. That was an option floated at the weekend, actually, by Steve Bates in the Sunday Mirror, that maybe they would let him go on loan to a Champions League club now on the proviso that he takes up the extra year with United being in the Champions League this time next year. I don't know how that's going to work out when it's easier to get into the Champions League when you've got Ronaldo in the team than when you haven't. But having said that, I wonder whether if he goes to Atletico Madrid, it's not as simple, I mean, as that, because Bayern Munich have recalled from doing a deal. Chelsea apparently have as well. If he goes to Real Madrid, it's going to be all about the pressing game. It's all about the pressing game, and I'm not convinced he has the legs to do that. That was part of the problem with Manchester United last season. Also, United have signed a few attacking players in midfield. I mean, Scott McTominay's going to have his work cut out if Cristiano Ronaldo lines up in that side next season. And United, quite a lopsided midfield.
United had got a good tour without him, it has to be said.
Yeah, they did.
Look, let's would you we've little time left, but any of the transfer news, anything jumps out at you that you want to talk about? Anything?
Yeah, I quite like this deal that West Ham have done for Gianluca Scamacca.
He's a striker, isn't he?
Striker, yeah, plays for Sassuolo in Serie A, 16 goals in 36 games. What's interesting is that the selling club Sassuolo, not a big club in Italy, but very cannily, they've put a 20% sell-on clause in his deal, and that's on the basis that the chairman there has looked at West Ham and thought, you know, West Ham are a decent club in the Premier League, but they are still a selling club. We think that if he does well there in 2 or 3 years' time, he will then be sold on at a profit, and we will get even more money than the 30.5 million plus add-ons that they're going to get this time. So it's very canny business. Barcelona are now getting closer to signing Jules Koundé from Sevilla, so that allows the player to stay in the country.
Here's what I don't understand about Barcelona. Right, we're told they're broke and they've got to offload their players and their big salaries and all that sort of thing, and yet they're signing right, left and centre.
Well, they've done this thing, haven't they? They've done a Leeds back in 99-2000. I don't remember Peter Ridsdale, the chairman there, basically leveraged all their future Champions League
mortgaged
earnings.
their future.
They did. Now, they're doing the same thing against future TV rights. Now, I think this is probably more of a concrete offer by Barcelona because they will get those TV rights because they'll always be one of the 2 biggest clubs in Spain. But it's a way of competing with clubs who are run by countries. We have clubs now in the Premier League, Manchester City, Manchester United, we've got PSG in France, who are run by nation states, and that's the way to compete with it. I don't think Barcelona are going to be the only club to attempt this. I think you could see clubs, not so much Man United. I think Man United are the biggest club in the world. They've got revenue streams coming out of their ears. They don't even have to win trophies to be a rich club. But other clubs around the world, you might see Arsenal doing that. A club like Arsenal who, they've got steady revenue streams, but are they going to get TV revenue in future? Yes, they will. Are they always going to be in the Premier League? Yes, they will. Are they going to be in the top 6? Yes, they will. It may be a trend, but it's quite worrying because it loads debt on a club.
Are you going to be back tomorrow? Yes, you will.
Of course I am, yeah.
Yes, good.
And I bought my QPR shirt at the weekend, £57, so 43.
Is that right?
Yeah, I did, yeah. I got some Football League badges on the...
And you got all of that for 57?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get a name on the back. I might draw my own name on there.
Well, that'll...
Or yours.
That'll stick it up, won't it?
Yeah, by 10p, yeah.
They are ridiculous prices.
Yeah, they are.
Good man. Thank you very much indeed.
Cheers,
Ian McGee.
Right, don't go anywhere. 25 minutes to 8. We're going to be going through the papers with Norman Baker and Emma Wolfe after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back to the programme. It is 7:37. Let's bring you up to date with the news this morning.
Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak have gone head-to-head in the latest leadership debate last night on BBC. The two candidates traded blows over tax, with the Foreign Secretary saying Sunak would lead the country into recession. But the former Chancellor claimed there was nothing conservative about Ms Truss's approach.
Public concern over inflation has skyrocketed. A poll by Ipsos found 45% of adults think it's one of the most important issues facing the country today, as prices continue to rise.
Hollywood actor and Goodfellas star Paul Sorvino has died at the age of 83. Sorvino played Paul Cicero in the 90s classic alongside Robert De Niro and Ray Lolita. His daughter, the actress Mira Sorvino, has led tributes describing him as talented and giving. Papers now with Norman Baker and Emma Wolfe. We say hello, good morning to you, and happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. It is 43 years of age today. There he is. Well, he's had a tough paper round. But
44,
anyway. 44. Happy birthday, mate. Happy birthday. Thanks for coming and doing this. We're going to go to the Telegraph first of all. Tories urge restraint in appointing peers.
Yes, this is the Eye, as a matter of fact, that particular story. But this is one of the Tory MPs, Chris Philp, former minister, suggesting that Boris Johnson needs to be restrained in the number of peers he's creating. Of course, the House of Lords is already the second largest chamber anywhere in the world after the rubber stamping dummies in the Chinese Assembly. 800 members or so in the House of Lords. I mean, they can't all fit in. And they've been piling the numbers in over the recent years. And the suggestion that Boris Johnson wants to appoint a huge number of Conservative peers and friends and everybody else to go into the House of Lords.
Can you be appointed and never attend?
You can. In fact, Lady Falkender, who was Harold Wilson's secretary.
PA secretary, yeah.
Let's put it gently, his secretary, who produced a lavender list of controversial peers for Harold Wilson, if you remember that, back in those days. She never, ever spoke in the House of Lords. She was the longest-serving member of the Lords, never spoke.
See, that would suit me. I'd quite like the robe and the title and all that sort of thing, but, you know, and a few photographs being taken, but not really to sit through a lot of those boring debates, really.
Well, you do very well, Eamonn, I think, you're making a good contribution to debates.
Fit in with the rest of them.
I'd pop along and sign in and get my, what is it, 350?
Well, this is a scandal. People turn up and they sign in and then they go away again and they get their daily allowance.
Exactly, and they're off for lunch in Westminster.
Yes.
So why would it be important? I can understand if everybody turns up at once, they can't fit them in. But Boris Johnson obviously has to look back and thank people who got him to where he was. And how does he do that? What are they saying?
Well, I don't think he's any worse than anybody else. I mean, he may appoint a whole lot of people who shouldn't be there in terms of numbers, but the fact is that the system, in my view, is not fit for purpose. I mean, we're seeing people appointed to the Lords because they gave money to a particular party or because they've done someone a personal favour. This is not the correct way of doing things, and the House of Lords really needs to be reformed.
Meaning?
Meaning, I think we ought to move towards a House of Lords which is largely elected. I mean, 80% elected, 20% appointed, perhaps, so it doesn't challenge the Commons. But at the moment, it's absurd, really.
OK. Emma, Here's something that always irritates the heck out of me. So we get a bit of dry weather and
I
then
knew this would annoy you.
Well, it does annoy me.
I knew you would say, oh, a little bit of dry weather.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's not my fault that there's a little bit of dry weather. What I'm saying is all these water companies, government in terms of planning, who they allow to, the amount of houses they're allowed to be built, the amount of factories they're allowed to be built, and water companies who don't dig holes in the ground to make these things called reservoirs, and never do, that annoys me.
There's a lot of water usage in this country, though, and we've had extremely high temperatures recently. This is the front page of the Telegraph, potentially hosepipe bans coming into force, with droughts predicted possibly as bad as 1976. And of course, we're all far too young to remember the droughts of the high temperatures of 1976. But this is the National Drought Group is meeting today, and they represent the water industry, farmers and government. And they're going to decide whether we need a hosepipe ban. It would not just be a hosepipe ban, it would also be asking households to cut down on non-essential water usage.
Well, you see, now, I do think water is an amazing commodity. Yet I'm expected to go home and recycle my Chinese takeaway last night and wash every tub out for something that will never end up being recycled in the first place. And you have to use water on that. I also have, we water our garden with recirculated water, with what's called, I think, brown water, whatever. I wonder, would that be affected, or would you get people snitching and saying, Eamonn Holmes' garden is very green. How is he doing that? He must be illegally using a hose.
I know.
Am I illegally using a hose if I'm using recirculated water?
I don't know the details, and obviously they haven't decided yet. But you're right, you get lots of sort of neighbourhood peeking over fences and people talking about golf courses and, vast...
We hear a lot about that,
water,
but does it actually really happen in practice? Neighbours actually calling up and telling tales on each other? Or is it all just rumour and speculation?
Oh, I mean, well, I've always lived in London, but I've definitely had, I remember when I was a child, there were definitely neighbours looking over the fence and saying they're watering their garden, because my parents were illegally, during hosepipe bans in the 90s and things. So, yeah, I think it does happen. I shouldn't imagine that's the biggest use of water.
Neither do I. I agree with you. People
and I agree with you 100% about the recycling nonsense as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we are looming for another mini heat wave. We've sort of already forgotten because so much has happened. But this time last week, we were sitting on temperatures of coming up to 41 degrees.
For 2 days.
Yeah, but
2 days, but they were the hottest we've ever recorded.
Yeah.
And we're simply not set up for that. And we do have temperatures like that, predicted for August. So let's see.
But I tell you, this problem comes every year, right? Every year, and nothing's ever done about it. Make the water companies dig holes in the ground. They're called reservoirs. That's my view on it.
Make them mend their pipes, actually, because there's a huge amount of water leakage still.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to the rail strikes? Front page of the Mirror we've got here. Nationalised rail, it's still on track.
Well, there's two things here, I think. The first is that the Labour Party appears to be uncertain what its own policy is, which is probably not very helpful going forward. Their policy appeared to be, in general terms, to say nothing very much at all about anything and wait for the Tories to lose the election, which I'm not sure is very responsible.
So remind us, because yesterday we heard from Keir Starmer, didn't we? And he said a Labour government was going to be about growth.
Yes.
But we're still a little bit hazy. And a representative from the Labour Party is coming on the programme in about 5 minutes' time, so we can ask them. We're still a little bit unclear as to what their policies actually are.
Well, I think, to be honest, that speech yesterday was rather vacuous, and it wasn't really clear what they really believe in. As I say, they're trying to say nothing.
It's interesting you say it's vacuous. You've got all eyes on who's going to lead the Conservative Party, and then this guy opens his mouth, and you're expecting some dynamism on this and whatever it is.
There.
And it is just unbelievable. He's like a wet lettuce leaf.
As I say, they're waiting for the Tories to lose the election. It's a dangerous strategy, because if the new Tory leader actually starts with a fresh sheet of paper, then where's the Labour Party in response to that? The other point about nationalising rail, which always gets me as a former Transport Minister, is that rails are renationalised, effectively. Network Rail belongs to the state. The Department for Transport basically controls what happens on the services. It runs the rolling stock companies, in effect, by saying which trains go where. There's not much to nationalise.
But except I get the impression, what do I know? I mean, you're a former rail minister, whatever. doesn't seem to be joined up.
No, and the government's plan, to be fair, which I think is quite good, the so-called Williams-Shapps plan, does actually bring together track and train again in a way that separated at privatisation. Privatisation was not a success in that sense back in 1993. But it brings us together again. But actually, what's to be nationalised? OK, you can take the trains over, but GBR is going to effectively, the new arrangement post-Network Rail, is going to effectively determine which trains go where, even what colour they are. The only private investment at the moment, or going forward, is going to be people who are contracted, companies contracted to run the trains. That's the only bit of private railway left, really.
What I think is fantastic talking to someone like you is you can see the love and the enthusiasm you have for railways. And you look at it and you think, what a commodity, what an asset for this country. Why is it not shown the love? Why do people not see what this can actually do, how many problems this can solve if we get it right?
I totally agree. On my wall in the Department for Transport when I was a minister, I had a 1960s cartoon, I think for the Daily Express, and it was showing a train going under a bridge, and one commuter saying to the other, "It's disgraceful, this train is 2 minutes late," and above on the bridge there was a traffic jam of cars going nowhere.
Yeah, going nowhere, you're worried about 2 minutes. Says it all, thank you.
Let's head into the Times. Emma, no to the snooze. Naps might be a sign of poor health.
Well, I had to bring this one up with early breakfast presenters, and we're all getting up at 3, 4 in the morning.
But we're dying.
You're dying. Someone in the green room was just saying they're going to go home and sleep, and I was just so envious and wanted to say, try having a toddler and you can't go home and sleep. But no, this is research by the Times. They studied data of over 350,000 people, so it's a proper study. They found that people who take frequent afternoon naps are more likely to get higher risk.
I don't take an afternoon nap. An afternoon nap takes me. I don't have any say in it. I'll be functioning and then suddenly just...
How long is the nap?
Hold on. You're at higher risk of stroke and heart attack. So there is a serious point to this.
Is it for people who are waking up at a normal time who are then deciding to have a sort of, siesta later on?
I don't know. But the interesting thing about this study is that these people that were taking frequent naps were also male, overweight, daily drinkers, smokers, insomniacs,
get the idea, right.
and also snorers. So you can see how people who are tending to just drop off on the sofa also tend to be in very bad health. So it's one of those, is it causation, is it correlation? You have to be really, really careful about studies like this.
Yeah, as I said, I'll be lucky if I am here next year.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
I'm lucky if I could live to Norman's age. That would be an achievement.
But the thing is, a 20-minute nap can be quite refreshing. I think if it's any longer than that...
Do you think? Because people say the 20-minute power nap. If I have a 20-minute, if I drop off for 20 minutes, I wake up and feel really kind of groggy and odd all day, and then have to start again and shower and brush my teeth. I don't know about these short naps. I would be so envious.
Have you ever had one, Rosie, and felt invigorated after 20 minutes?
I'm not really a napper, truthfully.
No.
I just power on through.
Exactly.
I think that what that's done to my lifespan, I really don't want to think...
Have you succumbed to an afternoon nap? Are you...
Sometimes. If I'm up early in the morning to do the paper review,
I find food finishes me off. If I'm up early and I've done...
Carb coma.
That's me.
Yeah, big old lunch and then a lovely long nap.
Well, talking of lunch, the cost of a chippy...
well, this is very serious, isn't it?
It is very serious. Our local one's closed down.
The Sun has this headline, "Cod help us," which, of course, is what the Sun would say for a problem with fish and chip shops. Half of chippies battered. Suggestion that half of the nation's chip shops could close. And this is partly, I think, due to the rising cost of potatoes and just general staff and other pressures.
And oil.
And oil and all the other things which they're having to deal with. So it's really quite serious. And it is part of the British tradition, fish and chip shops.
Absolutely right. I have, on the business of trying to avoid the dangers that go with an afternoon nap, I have occasionally at lunchtime had battered fish. I like haddock. more than cod.
Yes, I agree.
Yes, and mushy peas, but I don't have the chips. I feel very virtuous. I have the fish, but not the chips, and I come away and thinking that's okay.
Yeah, I'm the other way around because I'm veggie. I have the chips, and a good old really large portion of chips, and no haddock and no mushy peas.
Do you ever miss the fish?
No, I haven't eaten fish or meat for 20 years.
Nothing beats batter.
No, fish is really good for
That is
you.
great.
I'm not sure
Well,
battered is so good for you, but fish is full of protein.
If we're doing diets, I should say that I don't eat meat, but I eat fish. Because someone years ago said that meat is murder, but fish is justifiable homicide.
Oh dear. Okay. With that
my
thought,
goodness.
thank you both very much indeed. The guys are going to be back in about 40 minutes' time.
Now, earlier we were talking about potential confusion surrounding Labour's economic policy after that speech by Keir Starmer yesterday. Why don't we get some clarity from the party's Shadow Financial Secretary, James Murray. A very good morning to you. So, explain. Keir Starmer said that it was all about growth, growth, growth. Couple of really quick, direct questions. Would you nationalise the rail? And a second question to that, are you in support of the strikes tomorrow?
So we set out very clearly that we are committed to public ownership of the railways. That is part of our plan for growth, part of our pragmatic approach to how we would approach the issue of railways. We know that bringing railways into public ownership is the right thing to do in terms of value for money for taxpayers. It's right for the travelling public, and it's a really important part of our plan for growth and for our transition to net zero. So in terms of the railways, we're committed to public ownership.
If our esteemed friend in the studio here, Norman Baker, who's a former rail minister, basically says we do own them already. Would you like to clarify that with James?
Yeah, I mean, James, Network Rail was brought into public ownership actually under the coalition, and effectively the Department for Transport controls everything that happens, and GBR, which is coming down the track, is going to be in control of all the services, determining which trains go where. I mean, it's all effectively public already, apart from the fact that you've got private companies contracted under the future arrangements to run services.
Sorry, were you coming to me there?
Yes, I think so.
Yes, sorry, I'm just trying to listen in on this. Sorry, well, our plan for bringing railways into public ownership would mean that as existing contracts expire or franchises end, we would bring them into public ownership that way. But I think it's really important to set out that railways in public ownership makes sense because it's value for money for the taxpayer. It's really important for the travelling public to bring down the cost of travel. It's really important for economic growth, which was a key part of what Keir Starmer set out yesterday. And it also
I don't understand a word you're saying. This man beside me has just said he's just said we already own the railways. What am I missing here?
James, can you hear me all right? I mean, Network Rail is already publicly owned. GBR, Great British Rail, which is coming down the track, is going to bring together the trains and the track. They will determine the service levels, they will determine who runs what, they will determine everything, really. The only bit of the private sector left will be those companies contracted by GBR to run services. So there aren't any franchises anymore. The franchises have gone because they went with COVID. The Department of Transport is running everything now, really, effectively.
But we would want to make sure that parts of the railway which are in public ownership remained in public ownership. But when existing franchises end or existing contracts expire, that would be our opportunity to increase the public ownership of the railways. And as I was just saying before, you know, our approach to public ownership and to what to do with various markets that are not working for the general public is to look at how it fits within our fiscal rules. And bringing railway into public ownership is one that fits very clearly within our fiscal rules, as well as being, as I said, value for money for taxpayers and good for the travelling public.
OK, regarding fiscal rules, what did you think of the two candidates last night? Whose fiscal rules appealed to you more?
I don't think they have any fiscal rules. They were making it up as they go along. And, you know, what I found quite astonishing is it was basically an hour of two people who want to be leader of the Conservative Party, totally trashing the last 12 years of the Conservatives in government, really pointing out all of the huge failings with what the Conservatives have done over the last 12 years, and then offering no real solutions to what to do next. You know, as a combination of you know, more of the same continuity candidates alongside totally unfunded spending commitments. And I don't think anyone can have come out of that debate with any kind of confidence that these two candidates have anything to offer the general public in terms of tackling the cost of living, in terms of economic growth, in terms of all the big challenges that we face.
Well, if you were there, would you be increasing taxes or cutting taxes?
Well, what we've said is that we should have a fairer tax system, but I think in a way talking about taxes also misses the really big argument here around economic growth, because the truth is that we've become trapped in a cycle under the Conservatives where we have low growth and they've had to put up taxes. So we have low growth and high taxes, and what we're saying is that we prioritise economic growth because that's the real way to make sure that tax revenue increases to support public services over time. But without that missing part of growth, we're never going to get out.
Liz Truss was advocating
at the moment.
So you're Liz Truss advocate then? That's what she was advocating.
Oh, no, Liz Truss was advocating these wild spending commitments with no funding for them. You know, she's been making a huge number of promises to cut things left, right and centre, but without any explanation of how she would pay for them. And what's absolutely different in terms of what Liz Truss was setting out and what we set out in the Labour Party is when we advocate something, we say exactly how we would spend it. Last time I was on your show talking with you, Eamonn, I set out our plan to cut VAT on home energy bills, and I set out exactly how we would pay for that. And so that's the real difference you get with us, in that when we say we're going to do something, we say exactly how you pay for it so the public can have trust in what we're pledging.
Very quickly, come September, there will be a new Prime Minister. For the benefit of your party, who do you want it to be?
I want it to be a Labour Prime Minister come September, but that's because we want a general election to get the Tories out.
Okay, thank you very much.
James Murray, appreciate it.
Time.
James is the Shadow Financial Secretary speaking to us live there from Westminster. Thanks for your time. We've got to leave it there. And look, we'll take a break and we're going to be back top of the hour right after this.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Some areas of cloud around at first, especially central and southern parts of the UK, but sunny spells will develop. And apart from a few showers, many places will have a dry day. High pressure is moving in from the west. The low pressure is still departing to the east into Scandinavia. And a weather front has moved south across the country overnight. Now, this is now a weak feature, but it's brought a legacy of cloud for northern England into the Midlands, southern counties as well. It will take some time for that cloud to break up and for sunny spells to develop, but they will. And apart from a few showers across central areas and for the north of Scotland as well, many places will have a dry day. And with the sunny spells developing, with winds turning lighter, well, it'll feel warm with highs of 22 to 25 Celsius in the south, high teens and around 20 Celsius at best in the north. Through the evening, the cloud disappears, and with lengthy clear spells overnight and with light winds, well, it's going to be a cool night once again. I think in towns and cities, those temperatures will hold up at around 11, 12, 13 Celsius. But in sheltered parts, especially in the countryside, temperatures down to 5 to 8 Celsius. So a fresh start to tomorrow, but actually plenty of sunshine first thing. In fact, it looks like a sunny day for many, especially in the north, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, seeing those sunny spells continuing. But further south, some lively showers will break out and drift north into Wales and the Midlands by the afternoon. Away from those showers, temperatures faring well once again, with highs of 22 or 23 Celsius. Thursday sees further showers, especially in the north and the west. Likewise on Friday, but at the same time there will be some sunny spells and it will start to warm up as well.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Liz Truss accuses Rishi Sunak of peddling Project Fear as they clash during last night's TV debate.
A very good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Tuesday, the 26th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Rosie Wright.
Leading the news this morning, last night's debate, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss went head-to-head in a televised leadership debate on BBC that saw the candidates trade blows over tax cuts, inflation and defence.
The two Conservative rivals also promised to curb the power of the unions ahead of another walkout by rail workers that's scheduled to take place tomorrow.
Negligence from the energy regulator Ofgem has left consumers picking up the tab for failed energy companies. According to a new report from MPs, millions of people will be pushed into unmanageable debt without government support on energy bills.
And the former First Minister of Northern Ireland, David Trimble, has died at the age of 77. He played a key role in the Good Friday Agreement, earning him the Nobel Peace Prize.
And you can join in any of our discussions as you have just been doing. I will see what the latest is. We've been talking everything about Eurovision was one of the things, because next year's Eurovision will be held somewhere in the UK. Julia says, can I nominate Cardiff, please? The city in the land of song. A lot of people would say Liverpool has had more chart hits than anywhere in the country. It would be good. Kay says Edinburgh would have been good for Eurovision. It's twinned with Kyiv, so has a link with last year's winners. Interesting. Ingliston could easily be adapted to meet the required capacity, so I presume that's the theatre or the hall or the arena.
So whether it's your views on which city should host Eurovision, or perhaps who you think came out on top in yesterday's debate, and potential rumours of a hosepipe ban, get in touch. You can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us @gbnews. And we've got a poll currently going. Who do you think fared better in the debate last night? So head over to our Twitter and you can have your say there.
OK, so if you were watching last night, or if you weren't, let me tell you that the candidates in the Conservative leadership race traded blows that saw Rishi Sunak attempt to close the gap on the frontrunner Liz Truss.
The two candidates clashed on tax cuts, the cost of living crisis, how they deal with China, defence and the climate in what I think we can describe as increasingly fiery exchanges. Let's have a glimpse.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. So I'm not putting it on the never, never. I would start paying it down in 3 years.
Liz, that's simply not right. You promised almost £40 billion of unfunded tax cuts, £40 billion more borrowing. That is the country's credit card. It's our children and grandchildren, everyone here has kids, who are going to have to pick up the tab for that.
Rishi, that is not true.
There's nothing Conservative about doing that.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. I don't believe this negative, declinist language.
It's your own
that we're
economic
hearing.
advisor, Liz. It's not mine. It's your own advisor.
I have lots of economists that are backing my plans. Everybody thinks that putting up taxes at this moment is going to hurt the economy.
Do you know what mortgage rates are in the US at the moment? you want to use them as an example? Their mortgage rates are almost 50% higher than mortgage rates in this country because they're borrowing so much.
I'm sorry, this
Canada.
is scaremongering.
Canada actually
this is Project Fear.
Liz, I remember the referendum campaign. I remember the referendum campaign, and there were only one of us who was on the side of Remain and Project Fear, and it was you, not me.
Okay.
And you talk
maybe
about
I've
this.
learnt from that.
What we do need to do is acknowledge that China is a threat to our national security. It's a threat to our economic security. And that's why, as Chancellor, I was pleased that we could put forward something called the National Security and Investment Bill. We also need to stand up for our values. And for example, when it came to Hong Kong, I was pleased to ensure that we put the funding in place to welcome to this country thousands of fleeing who wanted to leave Hong Kong.
Rishi, I challenged you on this in the debate last week. As recently as a month ago, you were pushing for closer trade relationships with China. This is not something you've advocated in government. I'm delighted that you've come round to my way of thinking.
Now, there at the debate last night, our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, so he saw all that went on stage and behind the scenes. Darren, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, Eamonn. Pretty fiery, wasn't it? Pretty feisty, pretty ferocious, I would suggest, at times. That real big dividing line in this leadership contest on tax and the economy. Rishi Sunak essentially saying that Liz Truss's plans are irresponsible, that they will add massively to the national debt, which will get passed on to our children and grandchildren, that Britain really cannot afford tax cuts at this time. It will fuel inflation. Liz Truss's argument is that the pandemic was a once-in-a-100-year event and that it is sensible at this time to spread that debt out and to give people a bit of extra money in their pocket through tax cuts. That is the real big divide, but it is with, as I say, the ferocity, particularly that Rishi Sunak was making that case last night, that really sparked up the debate. Many, though, think that the former Chancellor went too far in talking over Liz Truss, but it is a sign, I think, of this real battle now between the candidates to try and convince voters with only, frankly, a week or so before they start receiving those ballots, so they get to decide which one they will back, not just to be, of course, Conservative leader, but the next Prime Minister. Well, Eamonn, I gauged the reaction of some senior cabinet ministers last night on either side of this debate about who they thought had come out best.
I think we had a really good debate. Liz finally got a bit of a word in, but nevertheless, it was, an opportunity to see clear differences between the candidates, because actually a lot they agree on the outcomes they want, to improve the prosperity of this country and for households and for families.
Look, I thought it was a great rambunctious debate, although at the end I think it showed the respect that both candidates had for each other. But on the central argument, how do we steer the country through this global fight against inflation, deal with the cost of living pressures, getting inflation down, and then get the investment into the economy that we need, and then take the tax cuts at the time when it's responsible and credible. I thought that Rishi Sunak won that hands down.
I thought Liz Truss did a fantastic job yet again in the debates, putting forward that positive vision for a low-tax, high-growth economy that's going to mean that our fantastic ceramic sector, but also those other type of digital technologies companies that we have here in Stoke-on-Trent are going to thrive, as well as making sure that those people who work really hard keep more of their hard-earned money in their pocket at a time when we're seeing, obviously, energy rises and fuel prices increasing.
But just to give you a sign of the blue-on-blue action, the Conservatives attacking the Conservatives at the moment, Therese Coffey there, the Work and Pension Secretary, saying that she thought that Rishi Sunak was mansplaining last night in the attacks that he had on Liz Truss. But it wasn't just on tax and the economy. As you saw, they fell out and they argued on China as well. And there was that moment, wasn't there, where essentially Liz accused Rishi Sunak of Project Fear, and he turned around and said, well, at the end of the day, you campaigned for Remain and Project Fear in the referendum. I mean, that's pretty personal, pretty bitter stuff to a large degree, though they both also essentially abandoned Boris Johnson, suggesting that he would play no future role in the government if either one of them became Prime Minister. In the end, what did the public think of it? Well, there was a Snap opinion poll that essentially said it was a score draw in the end between Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, though Liz Truss did end up a little higher amongst Conservative voters, and ultimately at the end of the day, those are the ones that matter. But is a score draw a good result for Liz Truss? I would suggest it is. If we are to believe the opinion polls and that Rishi Sunak is behind, he needed a game changer last night. I'm not entirely sure he had one, and that means Liz Truss probably came out on top. What do the audience who are actually in the room think of all of this? Again, I caught up with a few of them afterwards to gauge their views.
I went in kind of supporting Rishi because obviously I think he was a lot more prominent within the Boris Johnson era. But I think Liz did a lot better than I expected it to be.
It was lively, it was more entertaining than I thought it would be, and it was very informative, and I thought they got the points over.
Obviously they both seem to have quite a lot of long-term plans in place, which was quite interesting to hear. I didn't really hear much about short-term, which is what I was interested in, to be honest. But no, as an overall, it was quite interesting.
So no game changer for Rishi Sunak last night. Can he do more? Because I say that, there's another debate tonight, there's another one later on this week. It's going to carry on for weeks and weeks and weeks over the summer. But as I say, Conservative members start receiving the ballots at the start of next week. Many of them will have already made up their minds.
Darren, thank you very much indeed. Darren McCaffrey there, he's our political editor here at GB News. We can now speak to the former Brexit Secretary, David Davis, who is backing Rishi Sunak on all of this. David, good morning to you. Good morning. How do you think your boy did last night? I mean, I must say, he was full throttle. He was pretty hyped up, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, he was passionate, and as he should be. I mean, the issues we're talking about here are huge. I mean, the next Prime Minister is going to face some of the most difficult crises possibly in a century. We've already got the difficulties with energy, with the Ukraine, with the economy, health service issues coming up, and other crises we can't foresee. So, it's important. He cares about it passionately. What they were talking about last night, I mean, he's been attacked for intervening, but he was pointing out a simple fact, that if we follow Liz's plan, then what will happen, according to her own economist, is that interest rates, the base rate, will go up to 7%. That means mortgage rates, commercial rates of 8, 9, 10%, 4 times as high as they are now. Now, that's really serious. I've got children who have mortgages, and I worry about how they'll get by. I'm going to have to support them myself, I suspect, at the end of the day. So, you've got lots and lots of real big issues. So, it was important. He was passionate about it, and he was.
Passionate is one way of putting it. I'll just give you the view of Yvonne, who's got in touch. She said, "My vote's for Liz Truss. Rishi was plain rude, shouting over Liz, not giving her time to explain." Is Yvonne right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, whoever wins this contest is going to have to stand at the dispatch box of the House of Commons and deal with the House of Commons. I've done that, and it's very fierce. It's very hard exchanges. If you can't cope with that, then you won't make a decent Prime Minister. And Margaret Thatcher wouldn't have complained. I mean, both candidates have compared themselves to Margaret Thatcher. I knew Margaret Thatcher, and she would never have complained about being intervened on, because she would have had the answer. But last night, Liz Truss did not have the answers. I mean, frankly, she didn't have the answer to Rishi. She didn't have the answer to Faisal Islam, who asked her about her central borrowing strategy. She just didn't understand her own strategy. So I'm afraid, you've got to be able to deal with this in a debate. When I debated David Cameron, I was much fiercer on him than Rishi was last night. Nobody complained about that. Nobody accused me of being improper or rude. They said, actually, the points were important, and the points were important last night. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pounds on people's mortgage costs are massively important, and they need to be known about. So Rishi was right there, I'm afraid.
Why do you think it's not gaining as much traction with the Conservative Party membership at this point? Because all the polls that we've seen are consistently putting Liz Truss ahead by quite some margin.
Yeah, it's early days at the moment. I mean, polls are indicative, but they're not certain, and things change. And one of the reasons I think the Conservative Party members will turn towards Rishi is the fact he's clearly in command of his brief. I mean, look, I've seen a lot of these contests down the years. What we often do is appoint a leader, not just us, Labour Party too, appoint a leader for one crisis and then defeated by the next crisis. The exceptions, like Margaret Thatcher, the example everybody cites, are exceptions because of their character, not individual policy. They've got to be tough, brave, courageous. they've got to have consistency of principle, and they've got to have intellectual capacity. And on those counts, I think Rishi wins this, and I think that will come across in the debates. People will see he is in command, not just of the main threads of his argument, but all that's behind it. Last night when he was talking, when Liz was trying to say, oh well, other countries have lower tax rates, he said, well, do you really want to have the mortgage costs that the Americans have? He knew his facts, and that will come across again and again and again in these coming debates.
Well, she described those facts as Project Fear, of course. And David, I just wanted to ask you that, last night was the last big audience platform, I suppose, that Rishi Sunak will have got to put his message across. He really did have to go for it. Do you think he got the cut through that he needed to get?
On the arguments, I think he did. Project Fear, it's frankly a bit rich coming from Liz. Liz was one of the main proponents of Project Fear, and actually it's one of my tests when I was trying to decide which candidate to support. When I was saying who's got the character, well, look back at what happened in 2016. Rishi did the brave thing and supported Brexit when Cameron pretty much told everybody that was the end of their career, and Liz went with the Cameron line. Look at the issues during the middle of the COVID crisis. Rishi did the tough and difficult things and actually saved us from disaster. Best policy in the world, pretty much, according to the IMF. And now he's standing up for the tough policies now. And I think at the end of the day, the Conservative Party in the country will actually make its judgment not on whether this or that is a nicer policy for their own personal pocketbook. It'll make the judgment on what's right for the country. And that means a leader, a prime minister with great courage, great consistency of principle and great intellect. And that's Rishi Sunak.
David Davis, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed. David Davis, who's supporting Rishi Sunak. Thank you very much indeed. We were just talking about that poll that we were running here today. So 4,000 of you have taken part in that. What is it looking?
It's on our Twitter. 84% of you have said Liz Truss came out on top. Just 16% say Rishi Sunak. It'd be really interesting to know why that is. You can keep your emails coming in at gbviews@gbnews.uk or leave us a comment on the Twitter poll as well at GB News. We'll reveal the final results a little later, but it will take some significant amount of people voting to shift that from 84%.
Quite resounding, that is, I would have thought. 18 minutes past 8, bringing you up-to-date news-wise. Here's what's happening.
MPs are criticising the government over its handling of the coronavirus traffic light system, which you'll remember well from last summer, set the rules for those arriving in the UK about quarantine. Well, the Public Accounts Committee says nearly £500 million was spent on the scheme. Only 2% of those required to quarantine in hotels actually then tested positive for COVID.
Archie Battersbee's parents will ask the European Court of Human Rights to intervene after losing their latest legal battle to keep him on life support. Appeal court judges made the ruling yesterday but put the decision on hold for 2 days to give the family time to make an appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. The 12-year-old hasn't regained consciousness since suffering an accident at his home 3 months ago. Now, we should tell you that Archie's mother, Holly, will be here live in the studio 8:45 this morning.
Now, England faces a drought in August if the hot and dry weather continues. DEFRA and Environment Agency officials are meeting with water companies today to discuss how to better protect our water supplies.
We're now going to talk about the death of David Trimble, Lord Trimble, the First Minister of Northern Ireland. He's died at the age of 77. Tributes flowing into him. He's being termed a giant of politics who took risks for peace. How will the man be remembered? Let's go to the political commentator Eamonn Malley for this one. Eamonn, there are two Trimbles, there are a number of Trimbles. He reinvented himself throughout his life, and he means different things to different people. I mean, he was originally a very staunch, provocative Orangeman. When we think of Gorvaki Road and everything that would have alienated nationalists and Catholics. And then he becomes this disciple for peace complex. Explain the man that you knew.
Well, he was a very complicated individual. There were many sides to David Trimble. He had an uneasy personality. One didn't get the impression that he was very comfortable with himself, even with those who were supposed to be his closest confidants. I recall over and over again in Parliament buildings at lunchtime in the canteen, quite often his own people would approach him at the same time as he was moving towards the conveyor belt to get rid of his tray. And he kept moving. He was graceless in many ways. I recall very vividly in Belfast on a platform, when he left the platform, even though the President of the United States deemed the most important and the most influential man in the world, Bill Clinton, was sitting there. He just walked off the stage. Similarly, in the White House, I recall on St. Patrick's night, he walked out of the White House while the president and everybody else was present. So he was quite strange in ways, his modus operandi. But at the end of the day, he took the water jump and he changed the course of history. Because had he not done what he did on April 10, who knows where we would be today? Potentially, we'd still be at war here.
He gained, he became First Minister of Northern Ireland, but he lost as well. His own people considered him, I don't know if traitor's too strong a word.
Yes, but the irony is those externally, outside his party, branding him a traitor, eventually went into government with Sinn Féin and sat down in government with Sinn Féin. And indeed, Ian Paisley became very close to his Deputy First Minister, Mark McGuinness, who declared that he was indeed a member of the IRA during one of the inquiries in Derry. So it's quite interesting that those who criticised David Trimble on the outside eventually joined Republicans in government. Now, his real problem, though, at the time of the negotiations of the Good Friday Agreement, lay within his own party. The Irish government produced a document at that time on the Monday night about cross-border bodies. And in the words of John Holmes, who was Tony Blair's principal private secretary, it put the unionists over the edge, and David Trimble was left in an impossible position trying to sign the deal that was emerging. And in essence, he saved the day when he got what was called a side letter from Tony Blair, promising that should he go into government with Republicans, there would have to be action on guns within 6 months. And if there hadn't been action on guns, then the British government would take drastic action against Republicans. And it was also arranged for a confidential call to take place in the early hours of the morning involving Bill Clinton directly to David Trimble. And that afternoon, he jumped up, having considered everything, and he said, right, I'm going, who's coming with me? By this time, John Taylor was going ape, the former Euro MP and Westminster MP, and he walked out at one stage and he said he wouldn't touch the Dublin government with a 40-barge pole. So Trimble had to be very courageous. He took the decision to sign up to the Good Friday Agreement, and the rest is history. And that's the mark he left in history. But Eamonn, he would not be in the category of John Hume. John Hume found the language of problem resolving, of resolution, which ultimately delivered a peace process in Northern Ireland. But without David Trimble buying into it as a unionist, peace would not obtain today, I'm quite confident.
A great re-examination of history there, Eamonn. Really appreciate your insight, and Trimble, together with John Hume, of course, sharing that Nobel Peace Prize. Eamonn, thank you very much indeed. Very complex, very well explained. Thank you very much indeed.
It's 25 minutes past 8. Coming up here on the programme, Dr. Frankie will be here to update us on the latest symptoms of long COVID and telling us about the hidden cost of pandemic drinking. That's coming up.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good to see you again. This is Eamonn and Rosie. You're tuning in to Breakfast on GB News.
Now, could long COVID lead to a reduced sex drive and a thinning hairline? That's what's been suggested by new research, which also claims that women, younger people, and those who are from a minority ethnic group were at greater risk of the infection.
OK, for more on how the pandemic may have affected you in more unseen ways, NHS doctor Frankie Jackson-Spence. So it just keeps coming about COVID. It just seems to be it affects so many people in so many different ways.
I think with increased follow-up, this was a new thing. With increased follow-up, we're going to see more and more stats and data come out about how it's affecting people in the long term. And I think this study is really interesting, actually, that more and more symptoms are showing that long COVID can affect people in many different ways, and it's very broad. One person may recover really quickly from it, and other people are getting these interesting symptoms.
There are complications over collecting data of long COVID, though, aren't there? And lots of people self-reporting to have it. It's quite difficult. There's no sort of test to say, oh, well, you've got long COVID and you haven't. So how much can we really garner from this research?
Absolutely. You can't specifically say that some of these symptoms, which are vague, hair loss, for example, can happen sort of 8 to 12 weeks after any period of stress. We see people that have had any illness or injury or gone through childbirth can often experience symptoms like this. So it is difficult to attribute it directly to COVID. But I think if the symptoms are persisting, you've had a confirmed infection and you can't attribute it to anything else, it's reasonable to associate it with the COVID infection.
Pandemic drinking levels, explain.
So I think there was an increase in alcohol consumption during the pandemic. There was a new study published yesterday in Nature Medicine showing that amongst people that had a tendency to drink more than the recommended 14 units a week, there was an increase in alcohol consumption during the pandemic. And that hasn't actually come down, even though we're out of the pandemic. So I think a lot of people kind of lent on alcohol as a coping mechanism.
And now they can't get off it.
And now they've got an increased tolerance, have formed a new habit, and many people do have a dependency on alcohol now. We've seen an increase in the number of alcohol-related diseases, hospital admissions, and deaths from alcohol. In the first year after the pandemic, so in 2020, there was a 20% increase in alcohol-related deaths, and we haven't seen that statistic come down. So I think alcohol's another thing that's going to have long-term implications for people's health and the NHS.
Just very briefly, even this morning again in the papers, there was conflicting reports of how much wine you could be drinking a week. It was saying 5 large glasses would be fine, but no more. Give us what be your honest opinion. In a normal week, how much should we be drinking?
It's important to note that there is no safe level of drinking. So the guideline is maximum 14 units a week, but it's not a target. So really, if you can go without, it's better to go without. 14 units would be around 10 small glasses of a normal strength wine, but a small glass is about 125 mils, not the kind of 200 mil free pour most of us do, so less than you would think. There's quite interesting calculators online that people can work it out, but it is less than you think.
Doc, I want you to watch this next report because this is related to COVID and it's an interesting story. I'd be interested in your opinion at the end of it because this is a story about a Scottish MP accused of travelling to London. She did that knowing she had COVID, right? She's back in court today.
Yeah, it was Margaret Ferrier. She allegedly travelled from Glasgow in September 2020. You'll probably remember this story, despite having been told to self-isolate. Now, she, we must be really clear, denies the charge.
OK, our Scotland reporter Davy Donaldson is at Glasgow Sheriff Court to bring us up to date on this one. Davy.
Yeah, Eamonn, this is Margaret Ferrier. She's in court today for a preliminary hearing, so we'll find out today what the trial date and when that will be and when it will take place. It's expected to last, well, it was originally penciled in for 5 days. I think it's going to be a lot longer than that. Certainly, some people saying that's rather ambitious. But yeah, I mean, just to give you some background to this, she's accused, the prosecutors allege that the MP was suspended by the SNP in September 2020, booked to test for COVID-19, stating in the booking application form that she had symptoms of the disease. Then it says that the charge states that Mrs Ferrier was at a variety of locations over the 3 days in question. That's between the 26th of September and the 29th of September 2020. There's a whole list of locations here. We'll start in Rutherglen, such as the Lifestyle Leisure Centre, Sweet Pea Boutique and Vanilla Salon. It then says she made a taxi journey from her home in Glasgow's Cambuslang to the city's central train station. It's claimed she travelled to London Euston Station, elsewhere in the English capital, including the Houses of Parliament, before coming back. As we said earlier, she denies the charge. As I say, the date that's been penciled in for the trial is the 15th of August. We'll find out more on that later today, but certainly a very, very interesting case against Margaret Ferrier, who is the Hamilton West and Rutherglen MP.
Thank you very much indeed.
So that case, of course, dates back to September 2020, a very different situation to the one we're in now. Dr. Frankie, what do we do if you've got COVID? You know, there's no longer a legal requirement to self-isolate. Should we be travelling around the country?
So that's the point, isn't it? Whilst the legalities of it have gone away, we don't have to test, we don't have to self-isolate, there's no penalties if you do travel. Going back to the science, COVID is still a respiratory virus that is easily spread. And if you have symptoms, I think there's an element of personal responsibility of staying home when you have symptoms, just like you would if you had flu before this all started.
See, I think it's interesting what you're saying there. A number of people would say, yeah, I've got it, yeah, I've tested for it, but I'm fine. But it doesn't really matter if you're fine, does it?
So we know, don't we, when we went back, that lots of us were asymptomatic or felt fine. But the reason that these guidelines were in place were to protect the vulnerable population. And particularly as we go into the winter months again, we will see an increase in COVID cases. And it's important that people are still diligent with their symptoms. If you are symptomatic, then be sensible and not visiting vulnerable people, wearing a mask in busy places and avoiding travelling if unnecessary, I think is sensible.
Be aware of those vulnerable people. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much indeed. Look, we're going to take a break there. We've got the papers to go through again. Always enjoyable in the company of Norman Baker and Emma Wolfe.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Read all about it now in the company of Emma Wolfe, journalist and political commentator, and birthday boy Norman Baker today. You going to do anything nice? You going to do anything nice today?
I'm going to have dinner with my daughter. She's taking me out for dinner in Brighton, I think.
That's what daughters are for. That's very, very nice. She loves her daddy. That's good. Norman, we're going to start The Telegraph, page 6. Peers claim Prime Minister back push for... I don't know what that even means. So anyway, what's the story? What is the story?
This is a Tory peer, Lord Cruddas of Shoreditch, who says that Boris Johnson told him last Friday he, quote, wants to fight the next general election as leader of the party, unquote, and, quote, does not want to resign, unquote. Well, this is quite extraordinary, because whether you're for or against Boris Johnson, the fact is he's past news. He's yesterday's man. I mean, he's gone. And
but he's a master at the manoeuvre.
There's no way he's going to be leading the Tory
I think
party.
what you meant to say.
What do you think he might do
what you
next?
meant to say is that he's a narcissist. I think that's what.
Well, I think that's probably what it is. And also, this is a bit like Trump. Thinks he's going to come back and be president again. Yeah. It's the same thing.
It took so long to get him out, but I was very excited about this story. About a week ago, there was this poll. Apparently, there was a sort of a petition. So hundreds of thousands of people were signing up, and Lord Cruddas in Shoreditch, and I live in Shoreditch, and I didn't know there was a Lord of our local area. But yeah, it took so long to get Boris Johnson out. Can you imagine he comes back and then we have to start the whole process again of trying to prize him
it's a whole moral
out
debate.
of number 10?
I mean, he's soiled goods now, no matter what he achieved in the past.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he should have gone immediately because he's now sort of, looming around.
But what does this tell us about Boris Johnson? I mean, he cannot see any wrong that he's done. I mean, as you say, the parallels with Trump are absolutely amazing.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is he was removed by Tory MPs, which is a very dramatic thing for them to do, and he was removed because he's probably misled the Commons. A privileged committee will rule on that very shortly. He illegally suspended Parliament, or tried to and embarrassed the Queen over the Brexit vote. He's altered allowed the party culture in Downing Street to occur during COVID, and he's lost a succession of by-elections with huge majorities of Lib Dems. I mean, they had to get rid of him in that sense. So he's deluding himself if he thinks they want him back.
But that sort of, the fact is he is still popular amongst members, and I think that's what this kind of alludes to, is that he still has that sort of groundswell of support amongst grassroots.
No, interesting. When it comes to your takeaway, what do you order? Do you like an Indian? Do you like a Chinese? Do you like a pizza? Do you like fish and chips? What is it? Emma's going to tell you what is the most popular takeaway.
So, pizza takes the biggest slice, according to the Mirror. Pizza has now overtaken Chinese food as the number one takeaway.
No.
I thought the number one takeaway was Indian, but anyway, apparently Chinese is the number one.
I love Chinese food. I think pizza is the devil's food.
Why? Yeah.
Well, because I never feel good after eating a pizza. I always think, oh, that looks nice, and then I eat it.
Do you feel good? But do you feel good after a Chinese? Don't you always feel a bit full of MSG?
I feel completely bloated when I have pizza. It doesn't agree with me.
I think you feel good after a good Indian, after a really nice Indian takeaway. You don't feel quite as synthetic after Chinese food.
You talk about synthetic. I have been lucky enough in my time to work on a number of programmes with chefs who will create fresh Indian food, whatever. bears no resemblance to what
To a
you get
takeaway.
in a takeaway, and that is
But
top
good
end stuff.
Indian food or good Thai food is
Yes.
very, very
I
good.
like
Whereas
That's not what we were ordering on our Friday nights.
anyway, apparently in the past year, Brits have ordered 740 million pizzas. It reminds me of being a teenager when people used to order 10 pizzas to 20 pizzas to someone's house as a joke. Remember that? And then they would just turn up.
I think the thing about pizza is it's relatively easy to decide you want A, B, or C.
Yeah, so Italian classic is the most popular.
Oh, meaning?
What's on that?
What's
I
on
guess
that? Very little.
what pepperoni? I don't know. Italian classic is our number one choice.
Bland and boring.
Cheese and
Pepperoni.
Cheese and tomato.
Yeah.
Maybe a little sprig of basil.
Oh no, are we going to talk about pineapple and ham? I
I have no diffs with that.
No.
You can't do that.
No pineapple.
Thick base or thin
On a
base?
pizza.
Thick base or thin base?
Thin crust.
I'm a thick one. Maybe that's where I'm going.
Would you have a
wrong.
stuffed crust?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I could.
And pineapple and ham. God.
I could, but by far and away for me, Chinese does it for me every time.
Do you want to know the rankings? So number 1, pizza. Number 2, Chinese. Number 3, fish and chips. Number 4, Indian. And number 5 is burgers.
Yeah, there's a lot of burger deliveries now.
Yeah.
For all sorts of different places for those.
Let's look at some travel chaos.
Oh, have you nothing to add to this?
Well, actually,
nothing to contribute to
do you
this
know what?
conversation?
I actually do have something very significant to contribute.
Which is?
I was introduced to I can't remember how to say the brand now, but at-home pizza oven, and I'm completely obsessed. So you make the dough yourself, you heat up the pizza oven, and then it cooks in 1 minute.
1 minute?
Home. 1 minute. You put it in, quickly shut the door, wait 30 seconds. Use a pizza peel, which I've now become very well acquainted with, which is basically like a kind of baking tray on a stick.
Yeah.
And then take it out, turn it around, put it back in 30 seconds. Beautiful homemade pizza in 1 minute at home.
Wow.
I'm honestly obsessed, and you can travel around with you. So the thing is, I felt I had too much to contribute that I'd start going on about homemade pizza ovens for too long.
Okay, I'll buy that. You pizza fan?
Yeah, not very much. I mean, I tend to take YouView, actually, Eamonn, which is, it looks great, and then afterwards you wonder why you bothered.
Well, no. I bothered on Sunday night, and I wish I hadn't have.
Yeah.
Can I add something on the pizza? I think it's a swizz when you go to a pizza restaurant, I'm not going to mention names, and they do this thing called a leggera. They have a big pizza and they cut out the middle. They cut almost all of the pizza out of the middle and fill it with salad, and that's your cheap, your healthy option.
That's just sort of under 500 calories.
A swizz, yeah.
Okay.
Well, you don't have to order it. But yeah, I really, really recommend the homemade, because the thing is everyone can pick their toppings and you make it and you split them and share them. And I even tried a sweet pizza last night.
Meaning?
It had a mascarpone and sugar base with then raspberries and dark chocolate on top.
That sounds revolting.
Well, I was inspired because as a child, we went on holiday in Italy, and my dad said, I've got 3 younger sisters, and he said, you can order anything you want on the menu. I was like, great, I went for like a pepperoni or something, and my sister ordered a chocolate pizza. I said, that's not fair.
That's
My
cheating.
dad said, I said you could have whatever you wanted. And ever since then, I've had a little bit of envy over this chocolate pizza. So I
Did you
started
have it
having
as a
yesterday.
dessert or as a main?
Well, she had it as a main, which I thought was grossly unfair. But yesterday I had it for dessert.
Okay.
There we go, a lot about pizza. Can we move on to travel chaos?
Yeah, travel chaos, a right mess. So what is the legacy of Dover and what happened at the weekend, Norman? This is the Times.
This is here I met myself unpopular with your viewers and listeners, I expect, because this is Hugo Rifkind in the Times, who makes it very plain, I think, that the delays at Dover are largely as a consequence of us leaving the European Union, because we've lost our free movement. We used to be able to wander around without these checks, frictionless access to France and everywhere else, and now there's a delay because everybody gets their passport stamped. And you may say it was only 90 seconds. Hugo Rifkind said it took him 90 seconds to get his passport stamped. 90 seconds times hundreds of thousands of people going to Dover is a long delay, and some people are waiting up to, I think, 20 hours, the longest way to...
I think even 21, which is pretty gruelling.
Horrible, especially got kids in the back seat.
We asked for this, though, didn't we?
We did. I mean, this is one of the consequences. No doubt there are upsides, but one of the downsides is this is chaos. And I feel very sorry, actually, that I had my passport stamped. I went to Italy about a month ago. Had my passport stamped for the first time since 1976 from a European Union country.
OK, and if we go to the Star, they will say, Emma, it's your loss, EUR. Right, why?
I don't think I've ever chosen a story from the Star before, but this goes nicely with Norman's travel chaos. Yeah, so we know there's been horrendous delays at Dover and Folkestone, and as you know, queues up to 21 hours. And obviously claims that the French border police are being kind of, purposefully, utterly incompetent, not opening their enough booths in terms of getting people through, processing them through. And so now there are MPs, such as John Redwood and Therese Coffey, urging us to stay at home and saying, who needs France anyway? And they're saying, with the wonderful weather and all the delays and all of that, actually, better to stay in England. Better to stay in the UK,
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. If you just get a place that suits you, then super well.
What about French food, French wine, French culture, French countryside, the beaches? I mean, there is a lot more to France than just...
Yeah, but it is the hassle also in the same article that you talk about. It shows queues at Manchester Airport, it shows suitcases piled up at Gatwick.
Of course.
It shows road congestion, rail congestion. I mean...
I know. I think any travel at the moment is a major undertaking and a bit of a mental block for lots of us because we just fear all this.
Yeah.
But I don't think we need to attack France specifically. I don't think we need to, to further inflame this Anglo-French war. It's just not helpful.
They're our neighbours. We need to get on with them. It's silly having these discussions like that between politicians of different parties. I have to say, if you want to go abroad, I would recommend Eurostar, which is going to be less painful than the airports. And in
you can get one.
If you can get one.
They're getting really booked up very fast.
I know. And in my own part of the world, my own constituency, the New Haven Dieppe ferry, which is still running, and it's probably a lot easier to get onto than anything in Dover.
Yeah. Where is that from?
New Haven to Dieppe.
New Haven. Oh, very well.
Well,
it's the one that Lord Lucan disappeared on, allegedly, and never came back on.
Oh, yes.
There's also where Ho Chi Minh was a bar steward on the boat.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we end on, I think, what's going to be a very silly story in the Sun? Someone, I fear, has had their club card, their Tesco club card tattooed on them?
Yes, I don't know if this is coming up on your screen or not, but this is a man who he kept forgetting his club card, so he had Tesco's club card tattooed on his arm. Wasn't sure it was going to work. It didn't work on the self-service machine, but apparently it did work when you had it scanned manually by one of the Tesco employees.
It didn't even work on self-service?
It didn't work on self-service. But now he's thinking of getting a Sainsbury's Nectar card done as well.
No, he's not. That sounds so stupid and awful.
Guys, thank you both very much
and
indeed.
happy birthday, Norman.
Thank you
very much.
Happy 21st birthday.
Thank you.
I've gone down from 44 to 21. Thank you very much.
And you're going to be back at about 9:15 this morning as well, just reviewing events of the day, various things that have happened. Emma, thank you very much indeed. Lovely seeing you again. Thank you. The time is 30 minutes before 9 o'clock, bringing you up to date with the news. Here's what we've got.
MPs are criticising the government over its handling of the coronavirus traffic light system, which set the rules for those arriving in the UK. The Public Accounts Committee says nearly £500 million was spent on the scheme, you'll remember it well, but only 2% of those required to quarantine in hotels actually then tested positive. You're back. Tributes are being paid following the death of the former Ulster Unionist Party leader, Lord David Trimble, who was one of the principal architects of the Good Friday Agreement. Boris Johnson says Trimble's contribution to peace in Northern Ireland will never be forgotten, whilst the former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, described his efforts as immense. England faces drought in August if the hot and dry weather continues. DEFRA and Environment Agency officials are meeting with water companies today to discuss how to protect water supplies.
Well, this is an interview we didn't really want to do next with the lady beside me, Holly Dance. Holly is the mum of 12-year-old Archie Battersbee, and yesterday she lost an appeal against that decision to allow his life support treatment to end. This was the Court of Appeal, and they supported an earlier High Court ruling that ending Archie's life support was lawful, and they say in his best interest. So, what happens next? Now let's talk to his mum, Holly Dance. Holly, I saw the footage yesterday from the court and those judges sitting up there and ruling, and they're making this very clinical announcement about your boy. And that just must have been awful for you to hear the news that you didn't want to hear.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. But it's not over for you yet.
No, we've still got, I believe we've still got one more option, which obviously we've come this far. I'm not going to stop now.
What is that option?
There's a possibility, the United Nations or the European Court, I believe. So we're deciding today which one of those.
Well, it's very interesting that they give you 48 hours. They give you 2 days, really, to decide whether your son lives or dies. And I was just watching that and think, how on earth do you take all of that in? How do you move on? You must have a very good team around you.
I just think that I haven't been able to process anything. So again, like I said before, I'm in fight and flight mode. There is no time to think about anything or process anything. That's going to come after at the minute. Obviously, Archie's fight for life is the most important thing. So
between all this, do you get a chance to see him? Do you get, when that ruling is made yesterday, do you then go and see him? Or?
Yeah, I'm with him 24/7, aren't I?
Yeah.
Then I sleep there.
You sleep beside,
I sleep beside him.
And what's going through your mind, knowing the way things have gone so far?
It's extremely frustrating because it's cherry-picked what's being handed over to the courts. Now, the courts are obviously making their decision based on what evidence is going in. As I've said from day one, we haven't been allowed independent people in. When it was asked if Archie had muscle relaxing drugs before they attempted to do the brainstem test, I demanded a private blood test. We haven't been given that. And it was the examiners that actually asked the hospital, has this child, 3 times, has this child been given muscle relaxing drugs? They said Archie was brain dead after 2 days of being in hospital.
Yeah.
If that's the case, why is he still being heavily sedated 5 weeks later? Nothing makes...
But all of this happened, his accident happened when, April, wasn't it?
April 7th.
And he's been in this state since. So when you sit beside his bed of an evening and you look at your boy, what do you see? What do you see? How would you describe him?
Obviously, it's heartbreaking.
Does he look alive to you?
Yes, he does, very much alive.
Why?
It looks like he's asleep. He's got nice little flushed, like red cheeks.
So his complexion's good?
Yes, really good.
And you've said you've seen muscle reaction before. We're seeing him gripping
of the hand.
Your hand there.
He made breaths. He took breaths on Friday and on Saturday that I videoed, that the court, they haven't even looked at that, and they're still
Can I ask you, even besides looking at that, do these judges attend Archie's room? Do they go and see him?
There was the first judge that did go, we haven't asked any more judges, the first judge that did go and see Archie stood at the end of the room, didn't approach the bed, didn't attempt to talk to Archie.
Surely that is their duty. Surely they would have to do that. To make a pronouncement like this, to decide whether a child lives or dies, surely you would want to be there, to touch him, to feel his temperature, to just see. I mean, you are convinced your boy will wake up.
I know he will wake up.
You know he'll wake up?
I know 100% he will wake up.
But what happens if you don't get leave to appeal this again?
He's not going to get a chance to wake up. He's just going to be... He'll be killed, won't he?
Killed as a...
That's how I see it. He'll be killed.
Description, yeah.
Along with the other children like Charlie Gard, Alfie Evans. It's not fair.
Obviously, though, the clinical advice disagrees with what you are saying, so other people, professionals, aren't seeing what you see.
No, they're not. And I question that, because if they're so sure that this is the case with Archie, why will they not allow other independent specialists in to look at Archie?
I don't know. You've got to ask that question as to why.
You are fighting really hard, the most painful fight you could ever have imagined. Who's helping you? What kind of support do you have?
I've got some really good supportive friends around me. Obviously, our legal team are really good. I've got Ella, my son's girlfriend, Leona. We've got a close little network where people are obviously... Another friend, Kelly, she's doing a lot of stuff as well. It's...
And we're on a really difficult timeline, so I know you said you're thinking about what you're going to do today. How do you think the day's going to pan out?
I don't really plan the day. I know Archie's stable, which isn't what's being put through to the court. He is stable. You know, they say he can't maintain his temperature. He maintains his temperature. I've got hundreds and hundreds of daily pictures, different times of the day, where I'm taking a picture. But one thing I have noticed is they've put the air conditioning on full blown in Archie's room. The room is absolutely freezing, and he's still maintaining his temperature with his normal cover on.
Gosh. Holly, you know you're facing that deadline. You know, sometime tomorrow, whatever, the deadline runs out. Does that frighten you, or how are you thinking about that? I mean, time is literally ticking away.
It is frightening. Obviously, it's not something any parent wants to face. Again, I'm just going to give it all I can until I can't go no more.
I think it's very important. When I look at your son, I see a beautiful child, absolutely beautiful child. Tell us about him, just so that people realise this is not a statistic. This is a boy.
He's a beautiful little boy, Archie. He's so bubbly. He leaves an impact wherever he goes. He's very sensitive. He's a real charmer with his ex-girlfriends, as he calls it. I'm still on talking terms with all his exes. He's just a really funny, lovely, happy, energetic little boy. And one thing I can honestly say is, like me, Archie doesn't like injustice, and Archie would be doing exactly the same. If it was a role reversal, Archie would be fighting tooth and nail for me.
What would you give, how far would you go just to see him wake up?
Oh, I'd give anything, absolutely anything.
Well, I hope you do see that.
Thank you.
I hope you do. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Holly Dance there, Archie Battersbee's mum. We'll be back after this.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Some areas of cloud around at first, especially central and southern parts of the UK, but sunny spells will develop. And apart from a few showers, many places will have a dry day. High pressure is moving in from the west. The low pressure is still departing to the east into Scandinavia. And a weather front has moved south across the country overnight. Now, this is now a weak feature, but it's brought a legacy of cloud for northern England into the Midlands, southern counties as well. It will take some time for that cloud to break up and for sunny spells to develop, but they will. And apart from a few showers across central areas and for the north of Scotland as well, many places will have a dry day. And with the sunny spells developing, with winds turning lighter, well, it'll feel warm with highs of 22 to 25 Celsius in the south, high teens and around 20 Celsius at best in the north. Through the evening, the cloud disappears, and with lengthy clear spells overnight and with light winds, well, it's going to be a cool night once again. I think in towns and cities, those temperatures will hold up at around 11, 12, 13 Celsius. But in sheltered parts, especially in the countryside, temperatures down to 5 to 8 Celsius. So a fresh start to tomorrow, but actually plenty of sunshine first thing. In fact, it looks like a sunny day for many, especially in the north, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, seeing those sunny spells continuing. But further south, some lively showers will break out and drift north into Wales and the Midlands by the afternoon. Away from those showers, temperatures faring well once again, with highs of 22 or 23 Celsius. Thursday sees further showers, especially in the north and the west. Likewise on Friday, but at the same time there will be some sunny spells and it will start to warm up as well.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Liz Truss accuses Rishi Sunak of peddling Project Fear as they clash during the latest TV debate.
A very good morning. Good to have you on board. The time just after 9 o'clock on this Tuesday, the 26th of July. You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Rosie Wright.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, as you know, went head-to-head last night in a televised leadership debate that saw the candidates trade blows over tax cuts, inflation, China and defence.
The two Conservative rivals also promised to curb the power of unions ahead of another walkout by rail workers tomorrow.
Negligence from the energy regulator Ofgem has left consumers picking up the tab for failed energy companies. According to a new report from MPs, millions of people will be pushed into unmanageable debt without government support on energy bills.
And the former First Minister of Northern Ireland, David Trimble, has died at the age of 77. He played a key role in the Good Friday Agreement, earning him a Nobel Peace Prize.
You can join any of our discussions. Please do get in touch. We're also running a poll on our Twitter for who you think fared better in the debate last night. So head over there, GB News, or you can email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
It is our top story this morning. The Conservative leadership candidates, they traded blows on BBC last night, and it saw Rishi Sunak attempt to close the gap on Liz Truss, who remains a front-runner. We've been running a poll this morning. We're going to be giving you the result of that very shortly.
Well, the two candidates clashed on tax cuts, the cost of living crisis, defence, the climate, in what was some quite increasingly fiery exchanges.
So also, we're going to speak to Conservative MP and GB News presenter Dehenna Davison, who is backing Liz Truss.
Very good morning to you. You must be feeling fairly pleased by how Liz fared last night.
Well, I think her performance, just showed how calm she is under pressure. It showed her incredible experience. She got across her track record of delivery. I think her plans on taxation, on helping support families with the cost of living crisis, all came across really well. And I think last night in the debate, we did really see some of Liz's human side, some of that humour when she bounced back to Chris Mason about the Claire's accessories affair. And obviously looking at your guys' poll, I'm not going to reveal the result of it right now, but I did take a look earlier and Liz Truss was well ahead amongst your viewers.
The biggest criticism of her, though, is this lack of consistency. And she says she's been on a political journey, but it's quite hard to get around some of the sort of U-turns she's had in personal policy.
I wouldn't say it is, really. I mean, you look at, she gets critiqued for being a Lib Dem. That was back when I was about 2 years old is when she left the Lib Dems and joined the Conservative Party. So I'd say, 20-odd years of service is definitely good enough for me. And also she's had critique over the fact that she voted Remain, you know, which she's kind of admitted and really stood up to. But look at her track record since then. Look at what she's actually done in government to try and deliver Brexit and deliver those Brexit opportunities. You know, the dozens of new trade deals, the fact that she's been pushing through the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill to really finalise those final details of Brexit. A very difficult bill that was handed to her last minute after the resignation of Lord Frost that she's done alongside her duties as Foreign Secretary. You know, she really is committed to Brexit, and she's committed to seeing those opportunities delivered to people right across this country. That's what I judge Liz on, her track record.
If we look at some of the headlines this morning, Tory leadership candidates clash in acrimonious debate, bitter Tory rivals get personal. How worried are you, just outside of the debate, that come the 5th of September, this party has to act as one rather than this sort of like mudslinging and yesterday very personal attacks? You know, the general public, the majority of us who can't vote in those debates, will inherit this government, and they may slightly lose faith in them because of how Conservative candidates have been behaving.
Well, you know, these are two people fighting for the top job. You would expect them to have very robust debates and discussions around policy areas, and that's where the key clashes are, particularly over tax policy. But actually, I had this discussion at home last night. You know, someone asked, you know, what is it? Do you think that the party can come back together in September realistically? And of course I do, because ultimately we are all one team. We're still Conservatives to our core, regardless of stances on individual policy. And at the end of the day, what unites us are those Conservative values of aspiration and opportunity, but also the desire to beat Labour in the next election so that we can continue delivering for the country. So I'm very confident that the party can and will come together in September with a renewed focus for, you know, delivering for people at home, but also winning that next election.
In the meantime, though, you're providing the Labour Party with perfect sound bites of Conservative candidates slinging mud at each other. You're doing their job for them.
Well, as I say, there's robust policy discussions going on, but actually look at the polling that came out of last night. You know, you had Liz Truss overtaking Keir Starmer amongst the general public in polling for who people want to be the next Prime Minister. You know, if the Labour Party really were at the top of their game, they'd be absolutely miles ahead at the moment. I certainly don't feel worried about the next election. Labour don't have a credible plan. They don't have credible policies. Meanwhile, we're going to have a new leader with a renewed focus, with an incredible vision, who's going to carry our country forward. And I really hope that person Liz Truss, because she is the best place to win that next general election and crush Labour.
Does it hurt or does it help your campaign in supporting Liz to have comments about her wardrobe and her earring choice made public?
Oh, I think it was a bit of a daft tweet, to be honest. You know, as women, we always get this kind of critique around kind of fashion. And I know Liz has had loads of comparisons to Margaret Thatcher as well. You don't see that happening with blokes and get them sort of compared to Ted Heath. So it wasn't a tweet that I particularly appreciated. But, you know, to each their own. We each have different stances and different choices on the output that we do put out there on Twitter. I put out very little unless it's policy focused and unless it's about Liz's track record of delivery.
Thank you very much for your time, Dehenna. Really appreciate it this morning on Breakfast.
And the poll that Dehenna referred to, there's 6,000 of you got in touch today. Thank you very much indeed for that. What way did it go, Rosie?
Well, 84% of those of you who voted on our Twitter poll in favour of Liz Truss, 16% for Rishi Sunak. That is remarkable.
That's quite decisive, I would have thought, there, amongst GB News viewers as to who won last night.
Right, it's 8 minutes past 9. A Glasgow beauty entrepreneur has set up a charity for those coping with the loss of a baby or struggling with fertility.
Laura Porter was left feeling suicidal after experiencing a miscarriage and an ectopic pregnancy within months of each other. But now she's on a personal mission to help others who have been in that same position.
She set up Let's Talk Fab, which offers a 24-hour telephone helpline. Actually, I'm going to get you to explain it if I can. Very good morning. Explain to us then, Let's Talk Fab. What's the aim?
We are actually at the process, we're working towards our phone line, which we hope will go live by 2023. Currently just now we are running retreats for people, which are like wellness services where we can buddy everyone up together, about groups of 15 to 20 people. It's kind of just bringing people in the same circumstances into an environment that's comfortable for them and where they can communicate with people going through the same thing.
So, Laura, well, first of all, condolences to you after what? Oh, she's disappeared there. We'll kick the camera and try and get that back with you there. But basically, the charity that she's talking about, Let's Talk Fab, FAB, stands for Fertility and Births. So basically, the charity's launched to support families who have been through a similar situation. And when we say, Laura, you are now back with us, that you're there, FAB's there to support families, you're talking about men as well as women.
Yeah, I do feel that from the feedback that we've had, men seem to kind of be pushed aside in these instances as well, and a lot of focus is mostly on the women. But we're opening it up to families and friends that are around people who go through these circumstances, because I think a lot of people don't really know how to approach the subject, and I think that's where we need to push forward. We need to start talking more about these subjects and preventing people from slipping under the net almost, trying to kind of help mental health issues before it gets to that stage of people being unwell as a result of these failed pregnancies or any fertility issues that they have.
Really interesting that you're determined to sort of set up safer, easier spaces for people to be able to talk. I know from this happening to friends and family, it can be very difficult to know how to start the conversation, what to say, particularly if you feel like you can't empathise because you haven't been through it yourself. How should we start those conversations?
I just think you just need to do it the way that you would a normal conversation. I just think like shying away from it actually it made me feel a bit more isolated. I felt like no one was really interested in what was happening, and they probably were, but I don't think they knew how to maybe ask me how I was feeling at that particular time. So I'm going to do everything in my power to try and get people talking more about it, and even just people going through it as well, getting them engaging with other people in the same situation.
What I think is really fascinating, Laura, is we can understand losing a baby. We can understand that, and we can understand the grief process involved in that. I think what people are less accustomed to is understanding grief, as it were, associated with not being able to conceive.
Yeah, well, I think that's it. Like, everyone's told you're just going to get married and have kids, and sometimes it's just not that easy for people to do that. But we have support services for everything else in this country. Why do we not have enough support to help people through these difficult times as well?
Looking for, what's the aim? What is going to happen? What are you working towards?
I'm working towards a phone line, which I hope is going to be an outbound service, which we would do the follow-up. If someone's been in hospital, if they've been through IVF or they've had an ectopic, any sort of trauma, then we will contact them after they leave hospital. I think that's what's missing. There's no follow-up service. There's no one checking in medically to make sure that you're okay. So that's the goal.
You know, I got to ask you, the grief and the bereavement you went through and the reaction that you had to that. I don't know if it was delayed or it happened straight away or both.
No, mine was delayed. It was months and months after. Like, yeah, months. Yeah. And I felt my body still felt like it was actually going through a pregnancy, and I didn't really have the answers to why that was happening. So there was a lot of trauma that came a lot of time after the actual initial miscarriage and ectopic.
That as soon as you started talking about it, as soon as you went on social media, and you probably felt you were the only person in the world, you didn't know how other people were thinking this, you frighteningly found so many people also needed that support. They also needed to share. They also needed to talk with someone.
Absolutely, there's so many people. I couldn't believe the messages that we received at the start. So yeah, and I still get messages all the time, and right now I'm like taking that on a personal level, and I'm speaking to people until we have this proper, fully support set up for the phone line. Then I'm taking it upon myself to give people some advice and help if I can.
Laura, thank you very much indeed. Good luck with your charity.
Thank you for having me.
And Laura, if people want to talk to you, Let's Talk Fab, which is fertility and births, how do they get in touch? How do they track you guys down?
We're on social media, Let's Talk Fab, and our website is Let's Talk Fab as well.
OK, well, you've been fab to talk to. And
thank you.
Well, I hope we talk again and there's good news about your 24-hour support helpline. And well done you for helping so many other people through your own grief. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Thank you.
Right now it's coming up to 9:15 here on the programme. We're going to be taking you through all the top stories with Norman Baker.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Some areas of cloud around at first, especially central and southern parts of the UK, but sunny spells will develop. And apart from a few showers, many places will have a dry day. High pressure is moving in from the west. The low pressure is still departing to the east into Scandinavia. And a weather front has moved south across the country overnight. Now, this is now a weak feature, but it's brought a legacy of cloud for northern England into the Midlands, southern counties as well. It will take some time for that cloud to break up and for sunny spells to develop, but they will. And apart from a few showers across central areas and for the north of Scotland as well, many places will have a dry day. And with the sunny spells developing, with winds turning lighter, well, it'll feel warm with highs of 22 to 25 Celsius in the south, high teens and around 20 Celsius at best in the north. Through the evening, the cloud disappears, and with lengthy clear spells overnight and with light winds, well, it's going to be a cool night once again. I think in towns and cities, those temperatures will hold up at around 11, 12, 13 Celsius. But in sheltered parts, especially in the countryside, temperatures down to 5 to 8 Celsius. So a fresh start to tomorrow, but actually plenty of sunshine first thing. In fact, it looks like a sunny day for many, especially in the north, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, seeing those sunny spells continuing. But further south, some lively showers will break out and drift north into Wales and the Midlands by the afternoon. Away from those showers, temperatures faring well once again, with highs of 22 or 23 Celsius. Thursday sees further showers, especially in the north and the west. Likewise on Friday, but at the same time there will be some sunny spells and it will start to warm up as well.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome. Welcome back. It's coming up to 20 minutes past 9. Joining us again in the studio is political commentator and former Transport Minister Norman Baker. We're talking, of course, about the Conservative leadership debate, the head-to-head last night. Remind us of where you stand, because it was pretty bitter.
It was bitter, and I think anyone in the Labour Party or Lib Dems would have been revelling in it, because here's all this ammunition to be quoted back across the chamber and then lift leaflets before the next general election. So,
well, the Conservative MPs we keep talking to keep saying, oh, no, that's fine, you've got to be vigorous, you've got to be able to stand up for yourself. But the optics for the rest of the public aren't great for them to be rowing so much and being so personal.
It was personal. It looked a bit bitter, unnecessarily bitter. There wasn't just a debate about policy, though there was a clear difference. And one of them have to compromise and vote for things they don't believe in later on. But it was all, you did this and someone else did this, and it was all unnecessary, really, I think. But still, that's up to them.
You've cherry-picked some cartoons for us.
I have.
Where shall we start?
Start with the Times. I think cartoons are underestimated, because sometimes a cartoon, well, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yes, yeah.
And I think sometimes a cartoon can just encapsulate something which saves you reading the article that's underneath it, really. And the Times cartoon on the screen there is fantastic. Keep moving to the right and I'm happy, which is a suggestion that the crocodile's waiting, or the bun fight's moving the Tory party to the right, which it is, and the consequence will be that it gets snapped up by the reptile in the water, which I think is a very good way of putting it. And then we move on, if we can, to the Telegraph, which is the next one, and I'm going to declare an interest here, because this is drawn by my friend Andy Davey, who I was at university with, and he's one of my best friends, and I think genuinely he's a great cartoonist.
What a skill.
That.
Yeah.
A lot of skill.
So we've got, for people listening on the radio, we've got Sunak and Truss stood at podiums, and they've got speech bubbles that alternate.
Yes, we need to, says Rishi, clear up the mess. Says Liz Truss. Calls by the last, says Rishi. Hang on, says Liz Truss.
Yes, calls by the last. Oops, the last 12 years, or
well, the last what? Not the last Labour government. That's too far away.
Yes.
So
what way does the cartoonist work? Knowing your friend Anthony as you do,
Andy, yeah.
Andrew, sorry. Does he creates the picture, obviously. Does he also create the words, the joke, the tagline?
Yes, absolutely. What happens, I think, with Andy anyway, is that he provides the paper with, he does the Telegraph and the Standard, he provides the paper with 3 or 4 options, and they choose the one they want. Occasionally they'll come back and say, can you do something with it? But normally just take one of the ones he's drawn. So it's a big challenge, because he has to get up really early in the morning, even earlier than me probably, and you, Eamonn, to get going and get these cartoons in.
Be
a lot of drawing.
Yeah.
They're in by kind of midday for them to choose.
Yeah, and you've got to be funny every day. Come up with a new witty joke.
We've had a few things that weren't funny today. We had Archie Battersbee's mum, Holly, dance in the studio about 20 minutes ago. She had to face the Court of Appeal yesterday, which said, no, we're not listening to you. Your son is clinically dead. We're going to turn off these machines. She's got 48 hours to appeal that, to take it to the next level. And I just don't know how the woman gets through each day. No, well, look, I mean, may I say, Eamonn, I thought that was very sensitively conducted, that interview. But, I mean, there are no winners out of this, and there's a lot of grief and a lot of pain. And, of course, you feel sorry for the mum, because there's nothing more unnatural than one of your children dying before you. That's really unnatural. Obviously, you feel sorry for the lad who's in an accident and his life's taken away, probably. That's what's going to happen. And actually, you feel sorry for the judges, because they had an invidious position to try and reach a judgment on this matter based on medical evidence. And, you know, in a sense, they're passing down a death sentence. That's what it comes down to. Yeah. And it's horrible for them to do that. I'm sure they all felt really horrible about it. Yeah, ghastly. Right, Rosie.
We've got one more cartoon to take a look at. I believe.
Oh, good,
yes,
right, sorry. It seems almost a shame to come back to cartoons after that last discussion.
Does, I know.
The Mail cartoon, which again is, the Mail specialises in these small cartoons, which I think are quite useful, just filling the paper. And this is one with 2 people watching television. Rishi's boxing gloves are 10 times the price of Liz's, which is a nice way of linking the personal insults with the fact that there was a bit of a punch-up last night.
If you could look ahead to the 5th of September, and if we look at how people, particularly getting in touch with GB News, are sort of rating and polling and sort of testing the public opinion there, Liz Truss is ahead.
She is.
Lots could change.
Lots could change, and one of the interesting factors, and I understand that even if you vote early, you can then rescind that and vote later on in a different way if you want to do that. So the contest is live for weeks. Or vote early, vote often, as used to say, Eamonn, in your part of the world.
They did, didn't they? Talking about my part of the world, did you know David Trimble
Yes.
died yesterday? He was an interesting man from the point of view that he was a staunch loyalist, a staunch unionist, a fervent Orangeman. You know, he was part of all those Gravachy Road protests with the Orange men marching down the roads. And he turned himself about to make possible that Good Friday Agreement by acceding. In the process, he won himself a Nobel Peace Prize, but he lost the leadership of his party.
Well, he made a great sacrifice. I think he knew that was going to happen, and he and John Hume and the SDLP were incredibly brave. And actually, so was afterwards Ian Paisley and Martin McGuinness to come together, because to wrest a peace process out of the chaos that was in Northern Ireland with the Troubles, it was an amazing achievement. I mean, David Trimble was a slightly distant man. I mean, I didn't know him very well, but I mean, it was difficult to sit down and have a cup of coffee with him.
Yeah. But Tony Blair involved in this, John Major involved in this, so many people who pushed this over the line to make it happen. Bill Clinton. Indeed,
it's an amazing achievement, which is why some of us are very worried about this Northern Ireland Protocol business, which has got a potential to unravel the peace process, and I think that's very dangerous. And whoever wins the Tory party leadership has to really be serious about making sure that that's not damaged.
You see, every time Liz Truss in her debates talks about, and I've all that I've done for the Northern Ireland Protocol and what I've done there, I just want to say, what have you done there? As far as I know, there are 3 lawsuits that have come from the European Union.
Yeah.
So what has Liz Truss done with the Northern Irish Protocol?
Well, nothing, as far as I can tell. I mean, what the Conservative government's approach has been is to try and keep the DUP happy. They believe that's the important thing to do. Let's just remember the DUP lost the last election, and there were massive gains for the Alliance Party in the middle and indeed for Sinn Féin. But they've kept them on board. And that's a dangerous strategy, to alienate one side of the divide, not the other.
Norman, thanks for your view on everything, light and serious. I really appreciate you having there today. And of course, here we are with your birthday today.
It's not chocolate pizza.
No, we're told you're a huge fan of Colin the Caterpillar. So this one's for you.
Happy birthday.
This one's for you.
No candles. It's a bit of a shame.
But some Smarties.
It's some Smarties, yes.
And some Smarties.
You can have an argument as to who has the chocolate face.
And I hope you're going to have a piece each before you go home.
Good man.
Yes, please.
Happy birthday. Look, that's it. Rosie and I back tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. Up next, it's Tom Harwood with The Briefing. Thanks for your company this morning. Bye-bye.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Some areas of cloud around at first, especially central and southern parts of the UK, but sunny spells will develop. And apart from a few showers, many places will have a dry day. High pressure is moving in from the west. The low pressure is still departing to the east into Scandinavia. And a weather front has moved south across the country overnight. Now, this is now a weak feature, but it's brought a legacy of cloud for northern England into the Midlands, southern counties as well. It will take some time for that cloud to break up and for sunny spells to develop, but they will. And apart from a few showers across central areas and for the north of Scotland as well, many places will have a dry day. And with the sunny spells developing, with winds turning lighter, well, it'll feel warm with highs of 22 to 25 Celsius in the south, high teens and around 20 Celsius at best in the north. Through the evening, the cloud disappears, and with lengthy clear spells overnight and with light winds, well, it's going to be a cool night once again. I think in towns and cities, those temperatures will hold up at around 11, 12, 13 Celsius. But in sheltered parts, especially in the countryside, temperatures down to 5 to 8 Celsius. So a fresh start to tomorrow, but actually plenty of sunshine first thing. In fact, it looks like a sunny day for many, especially in the north, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, seeing those sunny spells continuing. But further south, some lively showers will break out and drift north into Wales and the Midlands by the afternoon. Away from those showers, temperatures faring well once again, with highs of 22 or 23 Celsius. Thursday sees further showers, especially in the north and the west. Likewise on Friday, but at the same